Humans only use 10% of their brains. The idea that humans only use 10% of their brains is one of the most persistent and misleading myths about human potential. The claim suggests that the remaining 90% lies dormant, waiting to be unlocked, hinting at untapped genius or superhuman abilities if only we could access it. It's a belief that has fueled self-help industries, movies, and countless motivational speeches because it whispers to people that they are sitting on unimaginable hidden power. But the truth is far less mystical and far more fascinating. Brain scans reveal that nearly every region of the brain is active at different times, even when you're resting or daydreaming. The organ itself makes up only about 2% of body weight, yet consumes about 20% of your energy. That means nature designed it to be used, not wasted. The 10% myth grossly underestimates the astonishing complexity of billions of neurons constantly firing, forming connections that shape thoughts, memories, movements, and emotions. No part of your brain sits useless. It's all performing critical roles, even the quiet background tasks you don't notice, like regulating your heartbeat or managing your body temperature. What makes the myth so powerful is the emotional pull of what if. People want to believe they are capable of more, that hidden genius lies just out of reach, and this myth validates that hunger for greatness. It makes people feel both limited and limitless at the same time, as if their true self is locked away beneath layers of wasted potential. Yet what's breathtaking is not the idea of untapped power, but the reality of how much your brain is already doing, how every forgotten detail, every surge of creativity, every tear, every laugh is proof that you're using far more than 10%. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. The belief that lightning never strikes the same place twice is one of those comforting myths that makes nature feel less unpredictable and less threatening. It paints lightning as if it were a conscious force, politely moving on after hitting once, ensuring the same place is forever safe. But reality is far more unsettling. Lightning often favors the same spots, and when it does, it doesn't ask permission. Tall buildings, radio towers, trees, and even open fields can be struck repeatedly, sometimes within the same storm. The Empire State Building, for example, is hit by lightning nearly 100 times a year. That alone shatters the illusion of safety this myth provides. The human brain craves patterns, and this myth feeds into that need for order. It tells us that once disaster has touched us, it won't return. But lightning is pure chaos wrapped in raw power, and it doesn't care about fairness. It follows the path of least resistance, and if that path happens to be the same one as before, it will travel it again without hesitation. That truth is frightening because it reminds us that we are at the mercy of forces beyond control or prediction. The emotional weight of this myth lies in its false reassurance. People want to believe they've survived the worst, that the storm has already chosen its victim, and they can finally breathe again. But the fact that lightning can, and often does, strike the same place again is a reminder of life's relentless unpredictability. It tells us that survival doesn't guarantee immunity, and that the storm never keeps a ledger of where it has been. Bats are blind. The phrase "blind as a bat" has echoed through generations, convincing countless people that bats stumble through the night sightless, relying only on sound to find their way. It's a phrase that reduces one of nature's most fascinating creatures into a symbol of helplessness. But the truth couldn't be more different, and it's almost poetic. Bats are far from blind. In fact, many species have eyesight that rivals or even surpasses that of humans in low light. Some can even see ultraviolet light, perceiving a world invisible to us. The myth likely grew from their eerie reliance on echolocation, the ability to emit high-frequency sounds and read the echoes bouncing off objects. It feels alien, almost supernatural, and so people assumed it replaced sight entirely. Yet bats don't live in darkness because they can't see. They thrive there because they are masters of both sound and vision. This dual system of perception makes them one of the most finely adapted creatures on Earth, perfectly designed to rule the night sky. What makes this myth linger is the emotional undertone of fear and mystery. Bats fly silently overhead, vanishing into caves and shadows, and humans fill in the gaps of what they don't understand with superstition. To call them blind is to make them fragile, less threatening, less powerful. But the reality is hauntingly beautiful. Bats navigate with a precision and awareness that we can barely comprehend. They don't stumble through darkness. They own it, seeing and hearing in ways that make the night their kingdom, not their prison. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. The Great Wall of China has long been celebrated as a monument so massive, so enduring, that it supposedly stands out to astronauts gazing down from orbit. The myth paints it as the only man-made object visible from space, a ribbon of human triumph cutting across the Earth's surface. But this is a story born of exaggeration, not reality. In truth, the wall is incredibly difficult to see without aid, even from low Earth orbit, because it blends with the mountains, valleys, and landscapes it was built upon. Its color and width merge with the terrain, making it no more distinct than a winding dirt road. The origin of this myth lies in the human need to elevate symbols of greatness. To say the Great Wall can be seen from space makes it feel eternal, godlike, a masterpiece so mighty that even the heavens cannot ignore it. But astronauts themselves have admitted the wall is nearly invisible without cameras or special lenses. What can be seen from orbit with the naked eye are things far more mundane: airports, cities lit at night, sprawling roads that gleam under sunlight. The Great Wall, for all its grandeur on Earth, disappears when seen from above. The emotional pull of this myth is powerful. People want to believe human achievement can etch itself so deeply into the planet that it defies the vastness of space. The disappointment of truth is humbling. Our mightiest structures, no matter how legendary, are fragile lines against the immensity of the Earth. It reminds us of scale, of how small we remain even at our most ambitious. Goldfish have a 3-second memory. The belief that goldfish can only remember things for 3 seconds has become a cruel joke passed down through generations, used to dismiss them as mindless decorations, endlessly swimming in circles with no awareness of the world around them. It strips them of depth, turning them into living ornaments rather than sentient creatures. But this myth is painfully false. Goldfish have been shown to remember information for months, not seconds, and they can recognize faces, navigate mazes, and even be trained to respond to signals and routines. The 3-second myth was likely born from watching goldfish drift back and forth in bowls, repeating movements as if trapped in a loop. Humans projected forgetfulness onto them because the truth that such behavior is born of confinement and instinct was less entertaining. Scientific studies have shattered the idea, proving that goldfish are capable of learning complex tasks and retaining them for long stretches of time. Some have even been trained to push levers, play simple games, or swim through obstacle courses, proving memory and intelligence far beyond what the myth suggests. What makes this misconception so haunting is the way it reflects human carelessness. If goldfish are believed to forget instantly, then it justifies the small bowls, the neglect, the lack of stimulation. Believing they are incapable of awareness allows people to ignore their suffering. But the reality is more poignant. Every flicker of light, every reflection, every change in their environment is recorded and processed. They live in a world remembered, not forgotten, and to deny that truth is to diminish the quiet intelligence of a creature that sees and remembers far more than we ever gave it credit for. Shaving makes hair grow back thicker. The belief that shaving makes hair grow back thicker is one of those myths that clings tightly because it feels so convincing when you see it with your own eyes. You glide a razor across your skin, and a few days later the stubble that returns looks darker, feels rougher, and seems coarser than before. It creates the illusion that the razor has somehow awakened something dormant in your hair follicles, forcing them to grow back stronger and more aggressive. But the truth is far less magical. Shaving has no effect on the rate, thickness, or color of hair growth. What actually happens is simple biology. Hair tapers naturally at the tip, which makes it feel soft and less noticeable. When you shave, you cut it bluntly at the surface, leaving behind a sharp edge that feels thicker when touched. As the hair begins to grow out, that blunt edge sticks out more prominently, creating the impression of coarseness. Combine that with the fact that fresh hair hasn't yet been lightened by the sun or worn down by friction, and it appears darker and denser. The follicle itself, however, remains unchanged. The emotional force behind this myth lies in the frustration of perception. People see and feel a harsher stubble and assume their actions created it. It feeds into fear and insecurity, especially for those shaving for the first time, making them believe they've unleashed a permanent change. In reality, the razor has no secret power. The hair was always destined to grow back exactly as your genetics commanded. The only trick is in how raw and unfamiliar it feels when it first reemerges. Napoleon was very short. The image of Napoleon as a tiny, angry man strutting around battlefields to compensate for his height is one of history's most enduring caricatures. The so-called Napoleon complex has become shorthand for men of small stature, overcompensating with aggression or authority. But the truth is startling. Napoleon wasn't unusually short at all. Records show he stood about 5 feet 6 inches to 5 feet 7 inches, which was average for a European male in the early 19th century. The myth was born out of mistranslation and propaganda. French measurements listed him as 5 feet 2 inches, but that was in French feet, which were longer than English ones. His enemies, especially the British, seized on this and twisted it into a weapon of mockery, shrinking the emperor in the public imagination. What makes this myth so captivating is its emotional sting. People love to see power figures cut down to size, to believe that someone who ruled vast territories was secretly insecure about something as personal as height. It humanizes him, strips him of majesty, and reduces him to a punchline. The British, locked in fierce conflict with France, knew the psychological impact of ridicule, and the idea of a pint-sized tyrant was too delicious to resist. Over time, this falsehood burrowed into culture until Napoleon's supposed shortness became more famous than his actual stature. The power of this myth lies in how easily people embrace stories that diminish giants. It plays into a deep desire to believe that greatness must be balanced by flaw, that those who command armies must also wrestle with private humiliation. Napoleon was not the tiny man history paints him to be, but the myth survives because it makes him feel less distant, less invincible, and easier to laugh at. Chameleons change color to blend in perfectly with their surroundings. The image of a chameleon instantly vanishing into the background by becoming the exact color of a leaf or a tree trunk has fascinated people for centuries. It's a myth that makes these creatures seem like shape-shifting magicians, masters of camouflage who can disappear at will. The truth, however, is far more surprising. Chameleons don't change color primarily to blend in. Instead, their shifting hues are a form of communication, mood expression, and even a way to regulate body temperature. A calm chameleon might be a soft green, while an agitated one can flare into brilliant yellows, reds, or deep blues. Males flash vibrant colors when trying to attract a mate or intimidate a rival, while darker tones can signal stress or submission. The ability comes from special cells in their skin called chromatophores and nanocrystals that reflect light in ways that create dazzling transformations. Camouflage does play a role, but It is only one piece of a much bigger story, and rarely as flawless as cartoons and myths suggest. The myth survives because it appeals to something primal in us, the fantasy of invisibility, of having the power to hide from danger or to blend seamlessly into any environment. It's the dream of control over how the world sees us. But the truth is more haunting. Chameleons are not invisible shadows. They are emotional canvases, wearing their moods and intentions on their skin for all to see. Their colors aren't about vanishing. They are about being heard, felt, and understood in a language of light. Humans evolved directly from monkeys. The idea that humans evolved directly from monkeys has clung stubbornly to popular imagination, reducing one of the most breathtaking stories of life into a crude misunderstanding. It paints a picture of a monkey one day, straightening its back, losing its tail, and transforming into a human, as if evolution were some magical overnight leap. But this is a distortion of what evolution really is. Humans did not evolve from the monkeys we see today. Both humans and modern monkeys share a common ancestor that lived millions of years ago, branching into separate paths that created the astonishing diversity of primates we know now. The myth endures because it's simple. It fits neatly into a single image, monkey to man, a ladder of progress that makes humans appear as the final perfected stage. But evolution is not a ladder, it's a sprawling tree with countless branches, some flourishing, some cut short, all part of the same living tapestry. To say we came from monkeys erases the richness of that story and dismisses the dignity of the species that still exist alongside us. Modern monkeys are not our past. They are our relatives, shaped by evolution in their own remarkable ways. What makes this misconception so emotionally charged is how it challenges human identity. People want to see themselves as separate, special, set apart from the rest of nature. The myth of descending directly from monkeys makes the truth feel absurd, even insulting. But the reality is more profound. We are not the pinnacle of evolution, but one expression of it. The same forces that carved the face of a chimpanzee or the swing of a gibbon's arm also sculpted us, linking every human heartbeat to the ancient rhythm of life itself. You swallow 8 spiders a year in your sleep. The idea that humans unknowingly swallow 8 spiders a year while sleeping is one of the most disturbing facts to ever creep into popular belief. It preys on primal fears, the thought of something crawling across your face, slipping past your lips, and vanishing down your throat while you lie defenseless. It's a myth designed to trigger disgust, fear, and the feeling that our beds, the places we feel safest, are secretly arenas for horror. But the truth is far less terrifying and oddly reassuring. There is no evidence that people swallow spiders in their sleep, let alone 8 of them a year. Spiders are not drawn to humans at night. In fact, they avoid us. The vibrations from our breathing, our heartbeat, and even the faintest movement on the bed are enough to send them scurrying in the opposite direction. To a spider, a human is a dangerous, shifting landscape, not a resting place. The chances of one not only approaching your face, but also willingly crawling into your mouth are astronomically low. So where did this myth come from? It was never based on science, but spread as an example of how quickly misinformation can circulate. People shared it because it was grotesque, memorable, and irresistible in conversation. It taps into a universal fear of losing control while unconscious, the horror of being invaded without knowing. That's why it thrives, because it makes you shudder, because it makes you glance at your pillow with suspicion, and because it whispers that even in your most vulnerable state, you're not safe from the tiny legs of something waiting in the dark. Cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. The sharp popping sound of knuckles cracking has long carried a warning with it. Stop doing that or you'll get arthritis. Parents scold children, friends cringe, and the myth spreads like a superstition passed through generations. The idea is simple and terrifying. that every crack is a step closer to stiff, aching joints and a lifetime of pain. But science has shown again and again that this is untrue. Cracking your knuckles does not cause arthritis. The sound doesn't come from grinding bones or damaging cartilage, but from bubbles collapsing in the synovial fluid that lubricates your joints. It's like releasing pressure from a sealed chamber, not breaking something inside your body. The myth lingers because it taps into two powerful emotions, fear and disgust. The sound itself is unsettling, enough to make many recoil, and that discomfort demands an explanation. Arthritis, a disease that brings visible suffering, became the perfect consequence to attach. It gives people a reason to police the habit, to weaponize the fear of a future crippled by pain. Even when research disproves it, the threat feels too satisfying to let go. What makes this myth emotionally sticky is its moral undertone. Knuckle cracking is often seen as rude, fidgety, a sign of nervousness or bad manners. Linking it to arthritis punishes the behavior with something severe, transforming an annoying habit into a dire warning. Yet the truth is far less dramatic. At worst, frequent cracking may lead to slightly weaker grip strength or swollen hands, but not the joint-destroying disease people imagine. The myth survives because it turns a harmless noise into a lesson about restraint, fear, and control. Bulls hate the color red. The image is iconic, a matador whipping out a bright red cape, the bull snorting, charging furiously at the fabric as if consumed by rage at the very sight of the color. It's a story that has burned itself into culture, convincing generations that bulls despise red with a primal hatred. But bulls are actually colorblind to red. What triggers their fury is not the color at all. It's the movement of the cape, the taunting waves, the challenge in the dance. The red cloth is tradition, chosen to mask the bloodshed of the bull ring, not to enrage the animal. The truth is far more tragic than the myth. Bulls do not storm forward because they see crimson and lose control. They respond to motion, to provocation, to the predator's game forced upon them in the arena. The idea that they hate red is a convenient lie, one that turns an animal's suffering into spectacle, making it appear as though the bull is an equal participant in some ancient rivalry between man and beast. But the reality strips away that illusion. The bull is reacting, not to a color, but to cruelty disguised as ritual. What keeps the myth alive is its emotional punch. Red is the color of blood, of danger, of rage itself, so it feels natural to believe it ignites something monstrous inside the animal. Yet the heartbreaking truth is that the bull charges because it has no choice, because it is trapped in a dance choreographed for entertainment, not survival. The myth hides the brutality, while the reality exposes it. Ostriches bury their heads in the sand. The image of an ostrich shoving its head into the ground at the first sign of danger has become a cultural metaphor for cowardice, denial, and avoidance. People repeat it as if ostriches are foolish creatures, hiding from reality by pretending threats don't exist. But this is a myth that strips them of dignity and twists instinct into ridicule. Ostriches do not bury their heads in the sand. What they do when danger looms is far more primal and intelligent. They press their long necks flat against the ground, blending into the earth, their plumage camouflaging them until predators pass. From a distance, this creates the illusion of their heads disappearing beneath the soil, giving birth to the lie. The myth survives because it resonates with human weakness. We see ourselves in it, the desire to turn away from uncomfortable truths, to hide from what terrifies us. It became a story less about birds and more about human psychology, repeated until the ostrich was forever branded with shame it never earned. In reality, these creatures are not cowards at all. When threatened beyond hiding, an ostrich can sprint at speeds over 40 miles per hour and deliver bone-crushing kicks capable of fending off lions. They are survivors, not escapists.
What makes this misconception sting is how it reflects humanity's tendency to laugh at what we misunderstand. To say ostriches bury their heads in the sand diminishes their power and turns adaptation into weakness. The truth is more unsettling. Nature gave them tools to endure, and instead of hiding, they fight, flee, or blend, facing survival with instincts sharpened by millions of years. It is not cowardice, it is resilience. You must wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. The belief that you must wait 24 hours before reporting someone missing has been repeated in movies, TV shows, and even by people who think they are offering helpful advice. It suggests that authorities won't take a case seriously unless a full day has passed, leaving families to suffer in silence while the clock ticks. But this is dangerously wrong. There is no rule that forces anyone to wait before filing a missing person report. In fact, waiting can mean the difference between life and death. The first hours after someone disappears are often the most critical. Evidence is fresh, memories are sharp, and opportunities to locate the person are strongest. Every minute that passes without action makes it harder to retrace steps, find witnesses, or intervene if foul play is involved. Yet the myth convinces people to hold back, filling them with doubt and guilt while precious time slips away. Law enforcement agencies encourage immediate reporting, especially for children, where protocols often trigger instant alerts. But the shadow of the 24-hour rule still lingers, paralyzing loved ones in the moment they most need to act. This myth survives because it feels logical. People disappear for ordinary reasons. They lose track of time, they want to be alone, or they turn off their phones. The idea of waiting 24 hours reassures us that maybe it isn't serious, maybe they'll come back on their own. But the emotional cost of this belief is devastating because it allows hesitation where urgency is required. It feeds a false sense of protocol while eroding the very thing most needed when someone vanishes: immediate, desperate action. Touching a toad will give you warts. The childhood warning is etched into memory. Don't touch that toad or you'll get warts. It's a myth wrapped in equal parts fear and fascination. The idea that these bumpy creatures carry some secret curse that leaps onto human skin with a single touch. Parents repeated it to keep curious children away from slimy ponds, and over time it hardened into a universal truth. But the bumps on a toad's back aren't warts at all. They're specialized glands, some of which can secrete toxins to protect them from predators. Warts in humans are caused by the human papillomavirus, a condition spread by people, not amphibians. No amount of holding, poking, or even kissing a toad will make your skin erupt in blemishes. The myth clings to us because of how visually convincing it is. Toads look like they're already diseased, their skin a battlefield of lumps and bumps, and humans instinctively recoil from what seems infected or contagious. Fear of ugliness, fear of contamination, fear of carrying something grotesque. It all merges into a single story that feels emotionally true, even if it isn't biologically accurate. The superstition taps into a primal part of us that sees danger in deformity, teaching children to avoid animals that might actually defend themselves with poison. What makes this myth emotionally powerful is its cruelty. It stigmatizes a harmless creature with the blame for human affliction, while also feeding into our dread of visible imperfection. The truth is that warts don't come from toads, they come from us. The toad, forever accused, simply carries its armor of bumps while we carry the myth, terrified that nature itself might mark us with its touch. Alcohol kills brain cells. The warning is repeated like gospel. Every time you drink, you're killing brain cells, chipping away at your intelligence, destroying pieces of yourself that can never be replaced. It's a phrase designed to scare, to paint alcohol as a slow poison that erases the mind one sip at a time. But the reality is different, and in some ways even darker. Alcohol doesn't kill brain cells outright. It disrupts how they function, damages the connections between them, and alters the delicate chemistry that makes thought, memory, and emotion possible. When alcohol floods the brain, it interferes with neurotransmitters, dulling signals, slowing reactions, and creating that familiar haze of intoxication. Over time, and with heavy use, alcohol can shrink brain tissue, damage dendrites, the tiny branches that allow neurons to communicate, and starve the brain of the nutrients it needs. It's not a massacre of neurons, but a sabotage of the intricate wiring that makes us who we are. Brain cells remain, but their harmony is fractured, their ability to work together disrupted in ways that ripple through memory, mood, and behavior. The myth survives because it's easy, dramatic, and frightening. Alcohol kills brain cells is a sentence that slams into the mind like a warning siren, but the truth is more haunting. Alcohol doesn't erase the brain, it rewires it. It twists emotions, reshapes personality, and erodes control. It doesn't leave the battlefield littered with dead neurons. It leaves survivors scarred, altered, and struggling to connect. That truth is not just a scientific correction, but a sobering reminder of how fragile and vulnerable our minds truly are. Sushi means raw fish. For many people, the word sushi immediately conjures images of delicate slices of raw salmon or tuna laid across rice, as if the very definition of sushi is nothing more than uncooked seafood. The myth has become so ingrained that entire cultures outside Japan equate sushi with raw fish alone. But this is a distortion of both language and tradition. Sushi does not mean raw fish at all. It refers to seasoned rice, specifically rice mixed with vinegar, sugar, and salt, which serves as the foundation of the dish. The fish, raw or cooked, is merely a topping or accompaniment, not the essence of sushi itself. The persistence of this misconception comes from how sushi was introduced to the West. The striking presentation of raw fish stole the spotlight, overshadowing the true artistry of the rice. In Japan, sushi chefs dedicate years, sometimes decades, to perfecting the preparation of the rice, treating it as the heart of the craft. Without it, the dish ceases to be sushi. It is simply sashimi, slices of raw fish presented without rice. Yet outside its homeland, the rice has been demoted to background scenery, ignored, and forgotten. What makes this myth emotionally resonant is how it reflects cultural misunderstanding. By believing sushi equals raw fish, people strip away the patience, heritage, and discipline that Japanese cuisine carries within every grain of rice. The truth is humbling. Sushi is not just about what sits on top, but about the foundation, the quiet element holding it all together. To mistake it for raw fish alone is to miss the soul of the dish, to overlook the years of tradition hidden in something as simple and fragile as rice. Carrots improve night vision. The idea that eating carrots dramatically improves night vision is one of the most enduring food myths of all time. Parents pass it down to children to convince them to eat their vegetables, while stories of World War II pilots supposedly seeing enemy planes in the dark, thanks to carrots, gave it an air of patriotic truth. The myth is charming because it suggests that a simple, everyday food holds the key to unlocking superhuman abilities. But while carrots are healthy and rich in beta-carotene, they do not grant the ability to see in the dark. The origin of this belief lies in a clever piece of wartime deception. The British Royal Air Force spread propaganda claiming their pilots' exceptional nighttime accuracy was due to eating carrots, when in reality, it was radar technology giving them an edge. The story caught fire, feeding into the natural desire for a simple solution to a complex problem. From then on, carrots weren't just vegetables, they became magic bullets for vision. It is true that vitamin A, derived from beta-carotene, is essential for maintaining healthy eyesight, and deficiencies can cause night blindness. But once your body has enough vitamin A, eating more carrots won't sharpen your vision further or make you see in darkness like a predator. The myth endures because it blends hope, health, and heroism. It tells children that obedience at the dinner table comes with a superpower, and it whispers to adults that the line between ordinary and extraordinary can be crossed with a single bite. The truth, though, is that carrots sustain vision. They don't transform it into something beyond human. Sugar makes kids hyperactive. The scene is familiar to almost every parent. A child tearing through the room after a birthday party, cheeks flushed, laughter spilling uncontrollably, and someone whispering, "It's the sugar." The belief that sugar transforms children into wild, uncontrollable whirlwinds is one of the most stubborn myths in modern parenting. But scientific studies have consistently shown no direct link between sugar consumption and hyperactivity. The truth is more complicated and far more revealing about human perception. Sugar does deliver a quick burst of energy as blood glucose rises, but it doesn't hijack a child's behavior. What creates the illusion is the environment in which sugar is usually consumed. Children get candy at parties, on holidays, during exciting events already brimming with stimulation. The laughter, games, chaos, and adrenaline amplify their behavior, and sugar takes the blame because it's the obvious, visible culprit. Parents' expectations add another layer. When they believe sugar will make their kids hyper, they interpret normal childlike energy as a sugar rush, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. The myth persists because it carries emotional weight. It offers a neat explanation for chaos, a villain to blame when children spiral out of control. It feeds the fear that something sweet and innocent is secretly dangerous, turning joy into disorder. It also gives parents a tool of control: no more sugar, or you'll go crazy. The heartbreaking irony is that sugar may not unleash hyperactivity, but the story about it has become more powerful than the truth. What people fear is not the sweetness itself, but the reminder of how fragile control really is when confronted with a child's boundless energy. You should pee on a jellyfish sting. The moment is burned into people's minds by movies and stories. Someone gets stung by a jellyfish, and the quick-thinking friend rushes to pee on the wound, as if urine were some magical antidote. It's a myth that has spread so widely it feels like common sense, but the reality is far less heroic and far more humiliating. Urine does not neutralize the venom. In fact, in many cases, it can make the pain worse. When urine hits the tentacle, remnants stuck to the skin, it can trigger the stingers, called nematocysts, to fire again, injecting even more venom into the flesh. The result isn't relief, but a surge of burning agony that feels like fire under the skin. The truth is that the best first aid for a jellyfish sting is rinsing with vinegar or salt water and carefully removing the tentacles with tweezers. Peeing on someone, no matter how well-meaning, is not only ineffective, but can also add an extra layer of shame to an already excruciating situation. What keeps the myth alive is its shock value, the sheer strangeness of the idea, the awkwardness, the desperate instinct to do anything in the moment. It taps into the drama of survival, where embarrassment doesn't matter if it means saving someone from pain. But the haunting reality is that this act, played for comedy or drama, can deepen suffering rather than end it. The myth endures because it's unforgettable, but in truth, it is a symbol of how misinformation can travel faster than facts, leaving people clinging to rituals that do more harm than good. Mount Everest is the closest point to space. For many, Mount Everest is not only the tallest mountain in the world, but also imagined as the point where Earth stretches closest to the heavens, the ultimate bridge between man and space. The myth has fueled awe and inspired climbers, making Everest feel like the very edge of our planet. But while Everest is the tallest mountain above sea level, it is not the closest point to space. That honor belongs to Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador, a peak many have never even heard of, standing thousands of feet shorter than Everest, yet perched on the swollen curve of Earth's equator. Because our planet bulges at the equator, Chimborazo's summit extends farther from Earth's center, placing it physically closer to the stars than Everest ever will be. The myth endures because Everest already wears the crown of human ambition. To say it is also the closest to space makes the legend feel complete, almost poetic. People want to believe that those who conquer Everest are brushing the edge of the universe itself, but truth is rarely so tidy. Chimborazo, silent and uncelebrated, sits in obscurity while Everest towers in fame. The highest does not mean the closest, and the tallest does not mean the nearest. This misconception strikes deep because it speaks to our hunger for symbols. Everest has become more than a mountain. It is a monument to endurance, ego, and human willpower. But the revelation that an overlooked peak surpasses it in this cosmic measure is humbling. It reminds us that nature doesn't bend to our myths of greatness. What we glorify is not always what reaches farthest, and sometimes the quiet, forgotten giant stands closer to the infinite than the mountain we worship. Humans have 5 senses only. The belief that humans are limited to 5 senses, sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, has been drilled into us since childhood, taught as a simple, tidy truth about how we experience the world. It feels comforting in its clarity, a neat package that defines the boundaries of human perception. But this is a profound underestimation of what our bodies are capable of. In reality, humans possess far more than 5 senses, and acknowledging them opens up a far deeper appreciation of how complex and fragile our connection to the world truly is. Beyond the well-known 5, we have balance, known as equilibrioception, allowing us to stand upright, walk, and move without falling. There is proprioception, the awareness of where your body parts are in space, which lets you touch your nose with your eyes closed. There is nociception, the ability to feel pain, and thermoception, the ability to sense heat and cold. Hunger and thirst are also senses, internal cues driving survival. Even the subtle ability to sense the passage of time, though imperfect, shapes our experience of existence. Scientists argue humans may have over 20 distinct senses, each one silently guiding, protecting, and informing us. This myth persists because the number 5 feels complete, almost poetic, and because limiting ourselves to 5 makes the mystery of the human body easier to digest. But the truth is humbling and awe-inspiring. Our reality is stitched together by dozens of invisible threads of sensation, each one fragile and irreplaceable. To lose just one is to feel the world change forever. The richness of life doesn't come from 5 tidy categories. It comes from a symphony of senses we rarely even realize we have. A penny dropped from the Empire State Building can kill someone. The image is chilling. A small copper coin slipping from a hand high above New York City, slicing through the air like a bullet and striking an unsuspecting pedestrian below with deadly force. It's a myth that has haunted childhood imaginations and city folklore alike. The idea that something so ordinary and harmless could become a weapon of instant death. But the truth is far less dramatic. A penny, even dropped from the Empire State Building's dizzying height, simply doesn't have the mass or aerodynamic design to reach lethal speeds. Air resistance slows it, keeping its terminal velocity at around 25 miles per hour. At most, it might sting or leave a small bruise, but it won't punch through a skull or bury itself in concrete the way the legend suggests. So why does this myth endure? Because it plays on the terrifying intersection of innocence and destruction. A penny, a symbol of worthlessness, becomes an agent of death when placed into the hands of gravity. The myth transforms randomness into danger, feeding into a primal fear of being struck down by fate itself, of tragedy descending from above without warning. It makes the sky feel unsafe, the city itself a place where even the smallest mistake could be catastrophic. The emotional hook lies in its simplicity. It's easier to believe a penny could kill than to grapple with the complexity of physics, air drag, and energy dispersion. It's a story people want to retell because it makes the world feel both fragile and dramatic, where the tiniest object holds the potential to end a life in an instant. Coffee stunts your growth. For generations, parents have warned children and teenagers to stay away from coffee with the ominous claim that it will stunt their growth. The image is powerful, a steaming cup stealing inches from your future height, freezing your body before it's fully formed. It's a myth born out of fear, not science, and it lingers because it touches something deeply emotional. Every parent wants to protect their child's potential. Every child wonders if something they love might secretly harm them. But coffee has never been shown to stop growth. Not a single study supports the idea that caffeine can shorten your stature or prevent your body from reaching its genetic destiny. The origin of this myth likely comes from old medical fears about caffeine. Decades ago, coffee was blamed for everything from heart disease to osteoporosis, and in the haze of misinformation, growth got dragged into the warnings. While caffeine can cause temporary issues like jitteriness, anxiety, or difficulty sleeping, none of these rob a child of inches. Height is determined mostly by genetics and nutrition, not by the morning ritual of sipping a dark roast. What makes the myth so sticky is its emotional resonance. Parents want to shield their kids from adult vices, and coffee, with its bitter taste and addictive pull, seems like something that shouldn't belong in small hands. Saying it will stunt your growth is less about science and more about control, a powerful scare tactic wrapped in parental love. The truth is that coffee doesn't shrink the body, but the fear it inspired has kept millions from tasting it too soon. Proof of how myths can shape lives long after the facts have been forgotten. Humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time. The belief that humans once walked alongside dinosaurs has been etched into the imagination by movies, cartoons, and children's books, showing cavemen fending off snarling T-Rexes with clubs. It's a thrilling image that collapses millions of years of Earth's history into a single dramatic scene, but it is a complete myth. Dinosaurs vanished about 65 million years ago after a cataclysmic asteroid struck the planet, while the earliest humans only appeared a mere 300,000 years ago. The gap between the two is so vast it is almost incomprehensible. Tens of millions of years where entire species rose and fell long before humanity ever existed. The myth survives because it is so intoxicating to picture. Children grow up with toys where humans and dinosaurs share adventures, and films like Jurassic Park fuel the fantasy that our species once stood face to face with these giants. It feels exciting, empowering, as if humans were tested against Earth's most ferocious beasts and survived. But the reality is far more haunting. If humans had lived alongside dinosaurs, we would never have stood a chance. The predators of the Mesozoic were apex killers, and the fragile beginnings of humankind would have been crushed under their shadow before civilization could take root. What makes this misconception so emotionally gripping is how it collapses the terrifying scale of time into something we can hold. To realize that humanity and dinosaurs are separated by millions of years forces us to confront our own smallness, our fleeting presence in Earth's story. The truth strips away the fantasy and replaces it with awe, an understanding that our species came late to a stage already scarred by cataclysm and rebirth. Long after the thunder lizards had turned to dust, gum takes 7 years to digest. The claim that swallowed chewing gum lingers in your stomach for 7 long years is one of those childhood warnings designed to scare obedience. Parents and teachers passed it along with grave seriousness, as if each piece of gum were a ticking time bomb of indigestible trouble waiting to clog your insides. It's a myth so vivid it sticks because it plays on the fear of permanence, that something so small and innocent could stay inside you for nearly a decade, haunting your body silently. But the truth is far less dramatic. Gum does not take 7 years to digest. Chewing gum is made of a base that resists digestion, yes, but that doesn't mean it becomes a permanent resident in your stomach. Like many things the body can't break down, such as seeds or rough fiber, it simply passes through the digestive system and exits in a matter of days. The body is designed to move foreign material along, not hoard it endlessly. Unless someone swallows an absurd quantity of gum in a short time, it will not accumulate or cause mysterious blockages. This myth has power because it feeds into the imagination of a hidden punishment. Children picture gum lurking in their stomach, layer after layer building into some grotesque mass, proof of their small rebellion against rules. It makes people feel that actions have unseen consequences, that even the most harmless indulgence can leave scars within. The reality is far less terrifying, but also less satisfying to our hunger for drama. Gum doesn't cling to you for years, it simply moves on, forgotten as quickly as the flavor fades. Vikings wore horned helmets. The image of a Viking is seared into popular imagination. Towering, brutal warriors with wild beards, animal skins and helmets crowned with menacing horns. It's a picture that has fueled centuries of fear, fantasy, and entertainment. Yet, it's entirely false. Archaeological evidence has never uncovered a single, authentic Viking helmet with horns. The real helmets were practical, iron, sometimes conical, designed for battle efficiency, not theatrical intimidation. The horned vision was born centuries later, in the 19th century, when costume designers for operas like Wagner's Ring Cycle dressed characters in elaborate horned headgear to heighten their drama on stage. From there, the image spread, reshaping history in the public mind until fiction became indistinguishable from fact. The persistence of this myth reveals something deeply human. We crave spectacle. A plain metal helmet doesn't ignite the imagination, but horns suggest savagery, otherworldliness, something closer to demons than men. The idea of horned Vikings feeds both admiration and dread, making them larger than life, embodiments of primal chaos and unstoppable violence. To strip away the horns feels like stripping away the myth itself, leaving behind not gods of war, but ordinary raiders and traders who were, in many ways, practical and calculated. The emotional pull of the horned helmet lies in how it lets us dramatize the past. We want our villains monstrous, our heroes terrifying, our history filled with imagery that electrifies the imagination. The truth that Vikings never wore horns into battle feels almost disappointing compared to the fantasy. And yet, the myth endures because it satisfies our hunger for legends more than reality ever could. Einstein failed math as a child. The story is irresistible. The greatest scientific genius of the modern world, Albert Einstein, once sat at a desk as a child and failed math. It paints him as an underdog, a boy written off as hopeless, who later defied all odds to unlock the secrets of the universe. It comforts students who struggle, whispering that even the brightest minds begin in failure. But this myth, however inspiring, is not true. Einstein never failed math. In fact, by the age of 12, he was already mastering calculus, far ahead of his peers. Teachers recognized his brilliance early, and though he struggled in certain subjects like language and rigid schooling structures, mathematics was never his weakness. The misunderstanding likely comes from a mistranslation of school records and from Einstein's own rocky relationship with authority. He disliked the rote, military-style education system of his youth and clashed with teachers, which made it easy for stories of his failures to take root. Over time, the myth of the boy who failed math grew into legend, spreading hope but distorting reality. What makes this myth so enduring is its emotional pull. People want to believe that genius can rise from failure,
that even if the world labels you as incapable, greatness can still burn within. The idea that Einstein stumbled in math humanizes him, makes him relatable, and gives comfort to those who feel inadequate. But the truth is more complex. Einstein was not a failed student who overcame his limits, but a misunderstood prodigy whose brilliance outshined a system unprepared to nurture it. The myth survives because it tells us what we long to hear, that failure does not define destiny. Black holes work like cosmic vacuum cleaners. The image of black holes as monstrous vacuum cleaners roaming the universe, sucking up everything in their path, is one of the most gripping yet misleading myths in all of science. It paints them as ravenous destroyers, endlessly devouring stars, planets, and light itself, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. It's a terrifying thought that space is littered with invisible cosmic predators waiting to swallow us whole. But the truth is both less frightening and more fascinating. Black holes do not indiscriminately vacuum everything around them. They obey the same laws of gravity as any other massive object, pulling only what strays too close, just as Earth pulls the moon into orbit or the sun holds the planets in its embrace. If our sun were replaced by a black hole of the same mass, Earth would continue orbiting safely as always. No sudden sucking, no apocalypse. Only within the event horizon, the invisible boundary where escape becomes impossible, does a black hole's grip become absolute. The myth persists because the idea of a bottomless void devouring all life speaks to primal human fears of being consumed, erased, or forgotten. It exaggerates reality into something nightmarish yet strangely magnetic. The emotional force of this misconception lies in how it mirrors death itself, an inescapable darkness that takes without mercy. To imagine black holes as vacuum cleaners makes them terrifying monsters. To understand them as natural consequences of collapsed stars makes them awe-inspiring phenomena that shape galaxies, forge energy, and sculpt the very fabric of space-time. They are not predators. They are the silent architects of the universe, more complex and more mysterious than fear alone can ever capture. Dogs see only in black and white. The idea that dogs see the world only in shades of gray is a myth that strips them of color, making their perception seem flat, lifeless, and dull compared to ours. It has been told so often that people imagine their pets living in a silent black and white film, chasing balls that all look the same and running through fields of grass that never shine green. The thought tugs at the heart, making us pity them as though their joy is somehow muted. But this belief is wrong. Dogs are not blind to color. Their world is different from ours, but far from colorless. Dogs see with 2 types of color receptors, while humans have 3. This means they perceive fewer colors, mainly in shades of blues and yellows, while reds and greens blend together into muted tones. A bright red toy might look dark brown to them, and a green lawn may appear yellowish, but the world still holds vibrancy through their eyes. Their vision is tuned to movement and low light instead, giving them an edge in hunting, detecting danger, and navigating at dusk, where humans falter. The persistence of this myth comes from underestimating animals, from assuming that because they cannot see exactly as we do, they must lack richness altogether. It comforts us to imagine superiority, to believe that humans alone are granted the gift of a colorful world. Yet the truth is more beautiful. Dogs experience a spectrum designed for their survival, their joy, their way of living. They don't need our reds or greens to be enthralled. For them, the world is already alive with the colors they were meant to see. Sharks can smell a drop of blood from miles away. The myth is terrifying in its simplicity. A single drop of blood in the ocean, and miles away, a shark turns, driven into a frenzy, racing toward its prey with unrelenting precision. It paints sharks as supernatural predators, creatures with senses so powerful that no human is safe once the smallest wound meets the sea.
But this chilling image is far from true. Sharks do have extraordinary senses, their olfactory organs finely tuned to detect substances in the water. But the reality is more limited. In ideal conditions, some sharks can detect blood diluted to 1 part per 10 billion. Remarkable, yes, but hardly the same as smelling a drop across miles of shifting, turbulent ocean. In fact, most sharks need to be within a few hundred feet down current for the scent to even reach them. So why does this myth endure? Because it preys on a primal fear of being hunted, helpless, and exposed in an environment that is not our own. The ocean is vast, alien, and unforgiving, and the thought that a predator could sense us from miles away makes us feel like inevitable prey. Movies like Jaws cemented the image, magnifying sharks into mindless killers who could sniff out death itself. The emotional weight of this lie is in its cruelty. It transforms a misunderstood animal into a monster, stripping it of complexity and demonizing it in the human imagination. The truth is that sharks are not flawless hunters, drawn to every drop of blood in the sea. But the myth lingers because it feeds our fear of the unknown, turning every cut, every scratch into a haunting reminder that in the ocean, we are not the masters, we are the vulnerable ones. Touching baby birds makes the mother reject them. The warning is told to children everywhere. Don't touch that baby bird, or its mother will smell the human scent and abandon it forever. The image is heartbreaking, a fragile creature left to die simply because of an innocent touch. But this is a myth. Birds, unlike mammals, have a very weak sense of smell, and they do not reject their young because of human contact. A mother bird does not turn cold and cruel because her chick carries the trace of human skin. Her instincts to protect and feed are far stronger than any faint, unfamiliar scent. The truth is that the biggest danger to a baby bird is not being touched, but being moved unnecessarily or left exposed to predators. Sometimes chicks fall from nests while learning to fly, and human intervention can help them by returning them to safety. The myth, however, has kept countless people from stepping in, paralyzed by the fear of causing rejection. It's a cruel irony. The lie meant to protect birds has, in many cases, doomed them. What gives this myth its power is the raw emotional hook, the idea that a single touch can sever the most sacred bond, that of mother and child, strikes deep into human fear. It plays on guilt, on the horror of accidental harm, making us believe that compassion might kill. But the truth is gentler. Birds are not so fragile in their love. They do not cast off their young so easily. The tragedy is that our belief in this myth has often silenced the very instinct that could have saved a life. Humans have the most genes of any species. The assumption that humans, as the most intelligent species on Earth, must also carry the most genes is a myth born from ego rather than fact. People cling to the idea that complexity of mind must equal complexity of genetic code, as if our superiority in thought and technology should be mirrored in the very blueprint of our bodies. But the truth is startling and humbling. Humans do not have the most genes. In fact, our roughly 20,000 to 25,000 protein-coding genes pale in comparison to far simpler organisms. A tiny water flea, for example, has nearly 31,000 genes, while plants like wheat contain more than 5 times as many as humans. Even an onion has more genetic instructions than we do. The myth persists because it feeds human vanity. We want to believe that being the so-called pinnacle of evolution means our DNA must be the richest, the most advanced, the ultimate collection of genetic material. But evolution doesn't work like that. More genes don't necessarily mean more intelligence or higher importance. Instead, it means different adaptations, different survival strategies, different ways life has chosen to write its story. Some species carry vast genetic toolkits for responding to environmental change, while humans rely more heavily on complex neural networks, culture, and cooperation to thrive. What makes this misconception emotionally striking is how it tears down our illusion of superiority. The idea that an onion or a flea carries more genetic material than us is deeply unsettling, almost insulting. But that sting of humility is exactly what makes the truth so powerful. It reminds us that life is not a hierarchy with humans at the top, but a vast, tangled web of strategies and solutions, each equally extraordinary in its own right. Tomatoes are vegetables. The belief that tomatoes are vegetables is one of those everyday misconceptions that feels harmless because it has been repeated for generations, reinforced at dinner tables, in grocery stores, and even in government classifications. People slice them into salads, cook them into sauces, and serve them alongside carrots and lettuce. So it feels natural to label them a vegetable. But biologically, tomatoes are fruits. More specifically, berries. They develop from the ovary of a flower and contain seeds, fitting the exact scientific definition of fruit. The insistence on calling them vegetables is less about biology and more about culture, tradition, and even politics. The confusion goes deeper than simple misunderstanding. In the late 1800s, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that tomatoes should be classified as vegetables for tax purposes. Since tariffs were higher on vegetables than on fruits, the court admitted that botanically they were fruits, but argued that in common speech and usage they were treated as vegetables, and so a scientific fact was overpowered by law, embedding the misconception even more firmly into society. What makes this myth emotionally sticky is the way it challenges what we think we know about the ordinary. To be told that something as familiar as a tomato is not what we always believe sparks discomfort, almost betrayal. It forces us to confront how easily tradition can override truth, how the stories we inherit shape our reality more than facts do. Calling a tomato a vegetable feels comfortable, but in doing so, we cling to a label built on convenience rather than truth, showing just how fragile our grasp of everyday knowledge can be. Seasons are caused by Earth being closer to the sun in summer. It feels like the most logical explanation. Summer must happen because Earth swings closer to the blazing sun, and winter comes when it drifts farther away. The story is neat, simple, and soothing in its symmetry, but it is also completely false. Seasons are not born of distance but of tilt. Earth leans on its axis at about 23.5 degrees, and that tilt determines how sunlight strikes different parts of the globe throughout the year. When the northern hemisphere tilts toward the sun, its days grow longer, the sunlight more direct, and warmth spreads across the land. Meanwhile, the southern hemisphere tilts away, shivering through winter. 6 months later, the roles reverse. The truth becomes even more unsettling when we realize that Earth is actually closest to the sun in January, during the northern hemisphere's winter. If distance ruled the seasons, everyone on the planet would bake and freeze in unison, a synchronized dance of heat and cold. Instead, half of Earth always basks while the other half endures chill, a duality carved not by nearness but by angle. This myth endures because it feels emotionally right. Proximity equals intensity. Stand near a fire and you burn, step back and you cool. People crave explanations that fit daily experience, and the idea of tilt is too abstract, too invisible to satisfy the gut. The emotional sting lies in realizing how wrong our instincts can be, how the forces that govern our lives, long days, short nights, the rhythms of warmth and cold, are dictated not by closeness, but by a subtle lean of our world, a quiet slant that decides everything. Earth is perfectly round. From childhood, we are taught to imagine Earth as a flawless sphere, a perfect blue marble floating in the blackness of space. Globes in classrooms, pictures in textbooks, and even the term round Earth reinforce this image, making it feel unshakably true. But Earth is not a perfect sphere. It is an oblate spheroid. slightly flattened at the poles and bulging at the equator due to its rotation. That means the distance around the equator is greater than the distance from pole to pole, giving our planet a subtle but undeniable imperfection. This truth was first revealed centuries ago through careful measurement, but the myth of perfect roundness still clings to popular imagination. We want to picture Earth as neat and symmetrical, as though perfection is written into the cosmos itself. The emotional power of the myth is that it makes our world feel ordered, pure, a shining pearl without flaw. To admit that Earth bulges and bends is to confront the messiness of reality, the fact that even our planet is shaped by forces of stress, spin, and time. What makes this myth haunting is how fragile perfection really is. Earth's shape tells the story of constant motion, of gravity wrestling against speed, of a body spinning so fast it cannot remain uniform. It is a reminder that the universe doesn't create flawless forms. It creates living, dynamic ones, marked by struggle and compromise. The lie of perfect roundness comforts us with simplicity, while the truth reveals a world that is complex, restless, and alive. The tongue has different taste zones. The belief that the tongue is divided into strict zones, sweet at the tip, salty on the sides, sour at the back, and bitter at the very rear, has been taught in classrooms, printed in textbooks, and etched into posters that countless children grew up memorizing. It suggests that our sense of taste is a neatly organized map, each region of the tongue locked into a single role. But this is a myth, one that reduces the astonishing complexity of taste to a child's diagram. In reality, every taste bud on the tongue can detect all 5 major tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, with no area limited to just one. The persistence of this myth can be traced back to a mistranslation of a 1901 German paper where small differences in sensitivity along the tongue were exaggerated into the idea of strict, separate zones. Once it slipped into educational charts, it spread like gospel, shaping how entire generations thought about their own bodies. Yet scientific research has shown again and again that taste buds, scattered across the tongue, throat, and even parts of the mouth, are universally capable of recognizing flavors. There is no taste desert, no dead zone on the tongue. What makes this misconception emotionally resonant is how it plays into our desire for order. We want our senses to be simple, mapped, and explained. The taste map gave us a comforting illusion of clarity, a sense of control over something invisible. But the truth is messier and more wondrous. Every corner of the tongue is alive with complexity, firing signals that dance with smell and texture to create the miracle of flavor. To believe in taste zones is to flatten a symphony into a single note. Humans have only 46 chromosomes, so we're simpler. The notion that humans must be simpler because we have only 46 chromosomes compared to other species is a myth born from a misunderstanding of genetics. It whispers that the number of chromosomes equals complexity, that fewer must mean less advanced and more must mean superior. But reality refuses to fit into such tidy arithmetic. Chromosome count has nothing to do with intelligence, capability, or evolutionary advancement. It is not a scoreboard of sophistication. It is simply the way DNA is packaged. Potatoes, for instance, have 48 chromosomes. Horses have 64. A small, unassuming fern carries over 1,200. Does that make them more intelligent, more evolved, more advanced than humans? Of course not. The number is meaningless without context. What matters is the content of those chromosomes, the genes, their sequences, and how they interact with one another. Humans have around 20,000 protein-coding genes, carefully arranged and expressed in ways that produce the extraordinary capacities of our brains, our bodies, and our emotions. The emotional grip of this myth lies in how much we want to measure and rank life. We crave hierarchies, a way to prove human supremacy, or worse, to expose imagined inferiority. To believe that a number defines us is to reduce humanity to digits, stripping away the breathtaking intricacy of how we truly function. The truth is both humbling and awe-inspiring. Simplicity and complexity cannot be measured by chromosome counts. Our greatness lies not in the number itself, but in the unimaginable symphony of what those 46 chromosomes carry. Every memory, every heartbeat, every possibility of who we are.
Brain cells can't regenerate. For decades, people were taught a bleak and absolute truth. Once your brain cells die, they're gone forever. Every drink, every blow to the head, every sleepless night was painted as an irreversible subtraction, dragging you closer to inevitable decline. The myth carved fear into generations, convincing people that the brain was a fragile machine slowly breaking down, never to repair itself. But modern science shattered this despair. Neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, does occur, particularly in regions like the hippocampus, which is central to memory and learning. Your brain is not a fixed organ doomed to rot, but a living, adapting system capable of growth and renewal. The persistence of the myth lies in its emotional weight. To believe brain cells can't regenerate makes every mistake feel permanent, every loss of memory or sharpness a punishment you can never undo. It feeds anxiety, regret, and a sense of helplessness against time. The truth, though more hopeful, is harder to accept because it means responsibility shifts back to us. Exercise, sleep, learning, even deep emotional experiences can stimulate the growth of new neurons, but neglect, stress, and unhealthy habits can smother that potential. What grips people about this lie is its finality. It makes the brain feel sacred yet fragile, a candle burning down with no way to replenish its flame. The revelation that the brain can, in fact, heal and rebuild is astonishing, but it also stings because it means we've underestimated our own resilience. The myth made us prisoners of inevitability, when in reality, our minds are far more alive and far more repairable than we ever dared believe. Lightning only strikes tall objects. The belief is comforting. If you are not the tallest object around, you are safe from lightning's wrath. People huddle near smaller things, avoiding trees or towers, convinced that height alone dictates the path of the bolt. But lightning is wilder than that. While tall objects like skyscrapers and trees are more likely targets, lightning does not obey a single rule. It can strike open ground, water, or even a person standing alone in a field, regardless of whether taller structures loom nearby. Its path is shaped by a chaotic mix of charge distribution, conductivity, and chance, not just height. The myth thrives because it gives the illusion of control. Believing lightning only strikes tall objects lets people think safety is as simple as avoiding trees or buildings, but the truth is far more unsettling. Lightning can bend, split, and travel miles horizontally before touching down. It has struck people sitting inside cars, fishermen standing waist-deep in lakes, and hikers crouching low in fields. The bolt is not a tidy arrow aiming for the tallest point. It is a raw surge of energy seeking the fastest route to neutralize itself, no matter how unpredictable that path may be. What makes this myth so dangerous is its false promise of safety. People lower their guard, comforted by the belief that lightning is orderly, when in reality it is chaos incarnate. The haunting truth is that no height can guarantee safety when the sky fractures open. The storm chooses its victim without mercy, and sometimes the smallest target becomes the one that burns. A duck's quack doesn't echo. The claim that a duck's quack doesn't echo has floated through trivia books, classrooms, and casual conversations for decades, turning a simple bird into a scientific anomaly. It paints ducks as strange exceptions to the laws of physics, their voices vanishing into the air as if the universe itself refuses to reflect them. But this is a myth, and like many myths, it lingers because it sounds too curious,
too quirky to let go. In reality, a duck's quack echoes just like any other sound. It follows the same physical laws of acoustics that govern thunder, footsteps in a canyon, or the strike of a bell. The misunderstanding likely grew because a duck's quack is soft, nasal, and drawn out, making its echo less obvious to the human ear. Unlike the sharp crack of a clap or the booming bark of a dog, the fading quality of a quack blends with its own echo, creating the illusion of silence. When scientists tested the claim in controlled environments, using microphones and acoustic analysis, the echoes were there, subtle but undeniable. The myth collapsed under the weight of evidence, though not before capturing imaginations for generations. What makes this misconception so emotionally sticky is how it plays with our need for exceptions. We crave the idea that the world still holds mysteries that defy rules, that somewhere out there exists a bird whose voice escapes the universe's laws. To learn that ducks obey physics like everything else is humbling, even disappointing, because it reminds us that the extraordinary often lies not in breaking rules, but in how ordinary things, like a simple quack, still ripple endlessly into the world, whether we notice it or not. Cavemen lived at the same time as dinosaurs. The image of a caveman wielding a club while a dinosaur roars in the background is one of the most enduring falsehoods ever etched into popular imagination. Cartoons, movies, and even children's toys have fused the two together into a prehistoric fantasy where humans and dinosaurs shared the same brutal landscape. It's a story that feels thrilling because it pits us against monsters, feeding our love of danger and survival, but it is entirely wrong. Dinosaurs went extinct about 65 million years before the first humans ever appeared. The truth is staggering when you consider the timeline. Dinosaurs dominated Earth for over 165 million years, vanishing after a catastrophic asteroid impact. Humans, on the other hand, are relative newcomers, with Homo sapiens appearing only about 300,000 years ago. To put that into perspective, if Earth's history were compressed into a single calendar year, dinosaurs would disappear on December 26, and humans wouldn't arrive until just before midnight on December 31st. The gap is not small, it's almost unfathomable. This myth persists because it is emotionally irresistible. People want to imagine themselves locked in battle with colossal beasts, proving their strength against nature's fiercest creations. The idea validates our obsession with survival stories, with heroes triumphing over impossible odds. But the reality strips away that fantasy and leaves something more haunting. We never faced the dinosaurs. We inherited their world. The bones buried deep in the earth are not reminders of our shared struggle, but relics of a vanished kingdom we never knew, a kingdom that crumbled long before we ever walked the ground above it. Water conducts electricity. The warning echoes like gospel. Never touch water near electricity, because water conducts it effortlessly. The phrase itself is enough to spark fear. Water as an invisible wire, ready to electrocute anyone who dares step too close. But the truth is far more nuanced and unsettling in a different way. Pure water, in its most distilled form, barely conducts electricity at all. It is the impurities dissolved within, salts, minerals, ions, that transform water into a dangerous pathway for current. The water flowing from taps, filling oceans, or pooling in rain puddles is never pure. It's filled with those impurities, and it is they, not the water itself, that make it deadly. The myth lingers because it feels absolute. People need sharp rules to navigate danger, and telling someone most water can conduct electricity under most conditions doesn't pierce the heart like the blunt warning that all water does. The emotional pull is its simplicity. It makes you cautious, fearful, obedient to the invisible threat humming in walls and wires. Yet the irony is chilling. Water, the very thing that sustains life, becomes a perfect accomplice to death when charged with current. What grips us is the betrayal embedded in the idea water is purity, cleansing, survival. To imagine it as a silent killer, carrying electricity with lethal precision, creates a sense of unease that sticks. And while the technical truth might absolve pure water, the deeper lesson remains. The things we trust most can be turned against us by what they carry unseen, and it is in that hidden contamination, not in the water itself, where the real danger lies. Eating fat makes you fat. For decades, the warning has been drilled into people's minds. If you eat fat, you will become fat. The idea feels logical, almost too simple to question. Fat in food must turn directly into fat on the body. Diet industries, food companies, and countless health campaigns thrived on this fear, flooding the market with low-fat and fat-free products that promise slim bodies and longer lives. But this is a myth that not only misled millions, it also caused real harm. Eating fat does not automatically make you fat. In fact, healthy fats are vital for survival, fueling the brain, balancing hormones, and protecting cells. The truth is that weight gain comes from consuming more calories than the body burns, not from fat itself. Ironically, cutting out fat often drives people toward sugary, processed alternatives that spike blood sugar, trigger cravings, and ultimately lead to more weight gain. Meanwhile, fats from sources like avocados, nuts, fish, and olive oil help keep the body full, stabilize energy, and even reduce the risk of heart disease. The demonization of fat was never about truth. It was about fear, marketing, and the desperate human search for simple answers to complex problems. What makes this myth so emotionally powerful is its shame-inducing simplicity. People struggling with their weight were told it was their fault for eating fat, turning meals into guilt and bodies into battlegrounds. The haunting reality is that fat was never the enemy. The lie twisted nourishment into fear, making people distrust one of the very nutrients that helps them live, think, and thrive. If you go outside with wet hair, you'll catch a cold. The warning echoes from childhood, whispered by parents and grandparents with the weight of certainty. Step outside with wet hair, and you'll come back sniffling, coughing, and bedridden. It's a myth that has woven itself into family care, a superstition disguised as science. But the truth is far less dramatic. Colds are not born from the chill of air or the dampness of hair. They are caused by viruses, tiny invaders that spread from person to person, regardless of how wet your head is when you walk into the world. The misconception thrives because of timing. Cold weather forces people indoors, clustering them together in closed spaces where viruses leap easily from one host to another. The chill becomes the scapegoat, the wet hair the ritual culprit, when in reality, it is proximity and invisible pathogens that sicken us. Studies have shown again and again that while being cold might slightly weaken the body's defenses, it cannot conjure a virus out of thin air. Wet hair doesn't breed germs. It only feels uncomfortable against your neck as the wind whips across your scalp. What makes this myth so emotionally enduring is its intimacy. It's tied to memories of mothers chasing children with towels, of warnings at the doorway before rushing off to school. It carries a sense of protection, of love expressed through fear. To discover that it isn't true is to unravel a thread of childhood ritual. Yet in that unraveling lies a deeper truth. The danger isn't in the wetness of your hair, but in the unseen fragility of our shared air, where every breath carries both life and the possibility of illness. Spinach is very high in iron. The belief that spinach is packed with iron, making it almost a miracle food for strength, has been repeated for over a century. It is the reason Popeye the Sailor Man gulped down cans of it to swell his muscles instantly, and why generations of parents insisted their children finish every last leaf on their plate. Spinach was cast as the vegetable that could turn weakness into power, but the truth is far less glamorous. Spinach is not especially high in iron. and the little iron it does contain is not easily absorbed by the body. This myth began with a simple mistake. In the 19th century, researchers measuring the iron content of spinach misplaced a decimal point, inflating its iron levels tenfold. The error went unnoticed for years, embedding itself into science, culture, and even children's entertainment. By the time it was corrected, spinach's reputation as an iron giant had already been sealed. The tragedy is that while spinach does have nutrients, the type of iron it contains is non-heme iron, which is far harder for the human body to absorb compared to the heme iron found in meat. To get the same benefit, you would have to eat absurd amounts of it, and even then, your body would struggle to use it effectively. The emotional weight of this myth lies in its promise of transformation. Spinach became more than a vegetable. It became a symbol of hidden strength, a cure for frailty, a shortcut to resilience. It made people believe that power could be swallowed in a single bite. The truth, however, is less magical and more human. Strength never came from the spinach itself, but from the belief it inspired. Evolution has stopped for humans. The comforting myth whispers that evolution is behind us, that humanity has stepped off nature's conveyor belt and now exists above the wild laws that shaped every creature before us. People cling to the idea that technology, medicine, and culture have shielded us from the merciless filter of survival of the fittest. But evolution hasn't ended. It never does. As long as humans reproduce, as long as some genes pass on more successfully than others, evolution continues to shape who we are. It's just not as obvious as saber-tooths chasing us or famines wiping out the weak. Today, it hides in quieter patterns: immunity to diseases, tolerance to new diets, resistance to environmental toxins, even fertility itself. The myth survives because it feels safe. To believe evolution has stopped is to believe we are finished products, perfected, untouchable. It soothes the fear of being fragile creatures still at the mercy of nature, but the reality is both humbling and unsettling. Genes are mutating, traits are being tested, and selective pressures still push against us, just differently. Antibiotic resistance emerges. Our bodies struggle against modern diets of processed food. Urban environments, climate change, and technology all create new arenas where biology collides with survival. What makes this myth emotionally powerful is its denial of vulnerability. People want to believe humanity has escaped the brutal lottery of nature, yet the truth is haunting. We are still evolving, still unfinished, still vulnerable to forces greater than us. The process didn't stop when we built cities and invented medicine. It simply shifted shape, silently sculpting the future of our species without asking for our permission. There is zero gravity in space. The image is burned into our imagination. Astronauts floating weightlessly through space, drifting as if gravity itself has been left behind. It creates the powerful illusion that space is a place without pull, a void of absolute freedom where the laws of Earth no longer apply. But the truth is that there is never zero gravity, not even in the farthest reaches of the cosmos. Gravity is everywhere, holding galaxies together, pulling moons into orbit, anchoring planets to their stars. Even astronauts aboard the International Space Station are still under the grip of Earth's gravity, experiencing about 90% of the pull they would feel on the ground. So why do they float? Not because gravity is absent, but because they are in a constant state of freefall. The station and everything inside it is hurtling around Earth at tremendous speed. Gravity is pulling it downward, but because of its velocity, it keeps missing Earth, endlessly falling around it instead of crashing into it. Astronauts float, not in the absence of gravity, but in the embrace of it, caught in a delicate balance between pull and motion. This myth clings to us because weightlessness feels like liberation. To imagine a place with no gravity is to imagine freedom from limits, from the heaviness that binds us to the ground. But the truth is haunting in its beauty.
Gravity never lets go. It stretches its invisible hands across the universe, binding stars, shaping worlds, and ensuring that even in the vast silence of space, we are never truly free of its touch. Left-brained people are logical, right-brained are creative. The idea that people are ruled by one half of their brain, that the left side makes them logical and analytical, while the right side makes them creative and artistic, has become one of the most seductive myths in modern psychology. It reduces the boundless complexity of human thought into a neat, binary label, allowing people to categorize themselves as a left-brain thinker or a right-brain dreamer. It's a story that flatters individuality, suggesting that your talents and limitations are written in the wiring of your skull. But the truth is far less divided. Both hemispheres of the brain work together constantly, and no human lives trapped in one side or the other. The myth gained traction from early studies showing that certain functions like language processing or spatial awareness are often more dominant in one hemisphere. This was twisted into the idea that people themselves must be dominated by one half of the brain. In reality, even the simplest acts require both hemispheres firing in tandem. Creativity involves not only imagination, but structure and logic. Problem solving relies on analysis as well as intuition. To be human is to be whole-brained, every thought a collaboration across the corpus callosum that bridges the two halves. The emotional pull of this myth lies in its simplicity. People want a clear identity, an easy explanation for why they struggle with math but thrive in painting, or why they write code yet stumble with poetry. It feels good to say, I'm just right-brained. But this comfort erases the truth. We are not split beings, but integrated symphonies of neurons with logic and creativity endlessly entwined, inseparable and alive in every flicker of thought. Dogs age 7 years for every 1 human year. The claim that every human year equals 7 dog years is one of the most widely accepted facts about pets, told with such confidence that it feels like a law of nature. It's used to comfort children, to calculate milestones, and to explain why a dog grows old so much faster than its beloved owner. The simplicity of the formula makes it appealing, reducing the complexity of aging into an easy ratio that anyone can understand. But the truth is that dogs do not age in such a neat, predictable pattern, and the 7 years rule is little more than a myth. Dogs mature rapidly in their first years of life, reaching adolescence and even adulthood within 1 to 2 human years. A 1-year-old dog is closer to a teenager than a 7-year-old child, and by age 2, many dogs are biologically equivalent to being in their 20s. After that, their rate of aging slows and depends heavily on breed and size. Smaller dogs often live longer, sometimes into their late teens, while larger breeds age more quickly, with many considered seniors by age 6 or 7. To reduce this complex process to a flat 7 years per year not only misrepresents their biology, but also robs us of the truth about how fragile and fleeting their time with us really is. The myth persists because it softens the blow of mortality. It gives people a framework, however false, to measure the bittersweet passage of their dog's life. But behind it lies a harsher reality. Dogs live fast and love hard, and their years are not bound by a simple equation. Their time is shorter, yes, but also immeasurably richer, a reminder that each moment with them carries the weight of years we wish they had. George Washington had wooden teeth. The image is unforgettable. The first president of the United States, stoic and commanding, opening his mouth to reveal a set of crude wooden teeth. It's a story that has been told in classrooms, history books, and folklore for generations, as if the father of a nation endured his leadership with splinters in his smile. But the truth is stranger and far more human. George Washington suffered from terrible dental problems, losing most of his teeth at a young age. By the time he was president, he wore dentures made from ivory, human teeth purchased from poor laborers and even enslaved people, and metals like lead and gold. Never wood, not once. The myth survives because wood feels symbolic. It suggests sacrifice, endurance, and humility, traits Americans want to see in their founding father. Wooden teeth feel rough, primitive, noble, like a man too busy forging a country to care about comfort. The truth, however, is darker. His dentures were painful, clunky, and at times grotesque. They distorted his face, pushed his lips forward, and left him in constant agony. Washington was not a man smiling through wooden hardships. He was a man suffering privately, carrying the invisible weight of disease, poor medicine, and social shame. What grips people about this myth is the way it humanizes power. A towering figure of history reduced to chewing on timber, it makes greatness feel approachable, almost comical. But reality tells a more haunting story. Washington wasn't comic, but tragic. His smile wasn't wooden. It was built from the suffering of others and endured through relentless pain. The myth hides the truth because the truth is harder to look at. Brown eggs are healthier than white eggs. Walk into any grocery store, and the choice feels loaded with meaning. White eggs or brown eggs. Brown ones often sit in rustic cartons, marketed as natural, wholesome, farm fresh. They cost more, and so the myth grows. Brown eggs must be healthier, richer, more nutritious than their pale counterparts. But this belief is nothing more than clever illusion. The only real difference between brown and white eggs is the breed of the hen that lays them. White-feathered hens with white earlobes lay white eggs, while red-feathered hens with darker earlobes lay brown ones. Nutritionally, they are nearly identical. The myth survives because people equate brown with natural and unprocessed. Just as brown bread is seen as healthier than white bread, brown rice over white rice, consumers project that same logic onto eggs. But unlike grains, where processing strips nutrients, eggs retain the same proteins, vitamins, and fats, regardless of shell color. The higher price tag of brown eggs has nothing to do with quality. It comes from the fact that brown egg-laying hens are often larger and require more feed, making their eggs more expensive to produce. What makes this myth so powerful is how it plays on guilt and aspiration. People want to feel they are making better choices, nourishing themselves and their families with the healthier option. Brown eggs, with their earthy appearance, promise purity and virtue, while white eggs feel ordinary, sterile, cheap. The truth, however, is humbling. It's not the shell color that matters, but the life of the hen, the feed it eats, the care it receives. The shell is just a mask. Nutrition hides within, unchanged by the color we worship. The heart stops beating when you sneeze. The belief that your heart comes to a dramatic halt every time you sneeze is a myth that mixes fear with fascination. People repeat it with a kind of morbid awe, as though each sneeze carries the brush of death itself, a moment where life hangs suspended before rushing back into rhythm. It's a chilling thought that something as ordinary as a sneeze might silence the very engine of your body, but the truth is less terrifying and more intricate. Your heart does not stop when you sneeze. What happens instead is a subtle fluctuation in rhythm, a shift caused by the pressure changes in your chest as air is violently expelled. When you inhale before a sneeze, pressure in your chest increases, affecting blood flow and briefly influencing the heart's rhythm. As the sneeze explodes outward, pressure shifts again, causing a temporary change in heartbeat pace. To the untrained ear, this pause in rhythm can feel like a momentary stop, but the heart never ceases beating. It stutters, it adjusts, and then it continues, faithful and unbroken. The emotional weight of this myth comes from its intimacy with mortality. A sneeze is such a small human act, yet people imagine it flirting with death each time it erupts. It makes the body feel fragile,
as though the thread of life could be snapped by something as harmless as dust in the nose. The truth is more reassuring, yet still powerful. Sneezing does not kill us. It simply reminds us how every beat of the heart, every rise and fall of breath, is a delicate dance of pressures and rhythms we rarely notice until we fear they've stopped. You can cure hiccups by holding your breath forever. The belief that hiccups can be cured by holding your breath forever is one of those exaggerated remedies that sounds both logical and terrifying. It plays on the idea that if hiccups are caused by spasms of the diaphragm, then forcing the body to reset through breath control should be the ultimate solution. But the absurd phrasing, holding your breath forever, reveals the dark edge of the myth. To take it literally is to imagine suffocating yourself just to stop a harmless, temporary annoyance. The cure becomes more dangerous than the condition itself. Hiccups are triggered by involuntary contractions of the diaphragm, often caused by eating too quickly, swallowing air, drinking carbonated beverages, or even sudden emotional changes. Holding your breath can sometimes help by increasing carbon dioxide in the blood, which may calm the spasms, but no doctor would ever recommend doing it endlessly. In reality, there is no single guaranteed cure for hiccups. People experiment with drinking water, swallowing sugar, or startling someone, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. The emotional power of this myth comes from the desperation hiccups create. That repetitive, unstoppable jolt of the body feels humiliating, even maddening, especially when it won't stop for hours. The myth tempts people with an extreme solution: sacrifice comfort, even survival, to regain control. It's a reminder of how deeply humans crave relief from even the smallest disruptions, how a trivial bodily quirk can push us to embrace absurd fixes. The truth is both frustrating and sobering. Hiccups pass on their own, and no cure, no matter how extreme, can outmatch the body's quiet decision to reset itself in its own time. Antibiotics kill viruses. The belief is so common it feels instinctive. When you're sick, when the fever rises and the cough deepens, you reach for antibiotics, trusting they will wipe out whatever invader has taken hold. The myth rests on a single dangerous assumption: that antibiotics are the universal cure, capable of killing both bacteria and viruses alike. But antibiotics only target bacteria. They are powerless against viruses like the flu, the common cold, or COVID-19. Taking them for viral infections doesn't just fail to help. It fuels a silent, terrifying problem: antibiotic resistance. The persistence of this myth is born from desperation and hope. When illness strikes, people crave action, a pill that restores control, a cure to prove we're not defenseless. Doctors, under pressure, sometimes prescribe antibiotics just in case, feeding the illusion that they work against all sickness. But the truth is more haunting. Every unnecessary dose strengthens resistant bacteria, teaching them to outsmart the very drugs designed to kill them. The result is a looming crisis where once treatable infections could once again become deadly, and surgeries, childbirth, even minor wounds carry the shadow of fatal infection. The emotional pull of this myth lies in the betrayal of trust. We see antibiotics as a miracle, a shield against suffering, and to learn they cannot touch viruses feels like weakness exposed. It forces us to face the reality that some battles must be endured, not medicated, and that our misuse of medicine is quietly crafting enemies stronger than the ones we fear today. The pill we thought was universal salvation is, in truth, a weapon with limits, and those limits are closing in. Alcohol warms you up in the cold. Few myths are as seductive as the belief that alcohol can chase away the cold. A sip of whiskey by a winter fire, a flask passed around in the snow, the burn spreading through the chest. It feels like liquid heat, like protection against freezing air. For centuries, people have clung to the idea that alcohol keeps the body warm, but It is a dangerous illusion. Alcohol doesn't warm you up. It tricks you. It dilates blood vessels near the skin, sending a rush of warm blood outward. You feel a flush, a fleeting glow, but inside, your core temperature is falling. This effect is treacherous in cold environments. By pulling heat to the surface, alcohol accelerates heat loss, leaving vital organs colder and more vulnerable. Hypothermia becomes more likely, and the body's natural shivering response is dulled, reducing your ability to fight the cold. Many who have collapsed in snowdrifts with empty bottles beside them felt that false warmth moments before their bodies gave way. It is not warmth alcohol gives, it is betrayal, a comfort that steals from within. The myth endures because of how powerful the sensation is. The fiery rush feels like proof, a warmth that cuts through the chill. Stories of soldiers, explorers, and wanderers using liquor to endure the cold turned it into tradition, passed down as survival wisdom. But the truth is darker. Alcohol doesn't protect, it disarms. It convinces you that you are safe as the cold quietly takes hold. The heat you feel is not salvation, but the body's last glow before it begins to fade. You should drink 8 glasses of water every day. The advice to drink exactly 8 glasses of water a day has been repeated so often it feels like scripture, a rule written into the very fabric of health itself. Parents drill it into children. Wellness gurus chant it as gospel, and countless people walk around clutching water bottles as if each sip wards off decay. The myth paints a picture of the body as a fragile machine, requiring an exact daily dose of water, or else it falters. But the truth is far more fluid. There is no universal 8 glasses rule. Your body's needs depend on countless factors: climate, activity, diet, and even the water hidden within food itself. Fruits, vegetables, soups all contribute to hydration just as effectively as the liquid from a glass. The origin of the myth likely traces back to a 1945 nutrition guideline that suggested adults need around 2.5 liters of water a day. But what was forgotten or ignored was the line noting that most of it comes from food. Over time, the nuance was stripped away, leaving behind a rigid commandment: 8 glasses every day, no exceptions. Science has since shown that thirst is a remarkably reliable signal, guiding us long before dehydration sets in. Forcing water past your body's needs doesn't make you healthier. It can, in extreme cases, even be dangerous. What makes this myth so emotionally gripping is how it plays on fear and control. People crave certainty in caring for their bodies, a formula to guarantee health. 8 glasses feels safe, measurable, easy. Yet the truth is both more liberating and more unsettling. Your body is not ruled by numbers, but by instinct, whispering through thirst when it needs you to listen. Owls are wise. The image of the owl as a symbol of wisdom is so deeply ingrained in culture that it feels almost sacred. From ancient mythology to children's stories, owls are portrayed as guardians of knowledge, silent observers of the night who see what others cannot. Their unblinking stare, their stillness, their haunting calls, all of it combines to give them an aura of intelligence far beyond human reach. But the truth is far less flattering. Owls are not particularly wise. Compared to many birds, they are less intelligent, relying more on instinct and hunting ability than problem-solving or complex learning. Owls' reputation began in ancient Greece, where the owl was associated with Athena, the goddess of wisdom. The symbolism endured because their nocturnal habits made them seem mysterious, as though they had access to secrets hidden in darkness. In reality, owls have large forward-facing eyes for hunting in low light, powerful talons for gripping prey, and an extraordinary ability to rotate their heads. These are adaptations for survival, not evidence of higher reasoning. Studies show that crows, ravens, and parrots far surpass owls in learning, memory, and tool use, while owls remain specialized predators.
The persistence of the myth lies in the emotional pull of appearances. Humans look at the owl's solemn gaze and project intelligence where there is only instinct. We want to believe that something so majestic must also be wise, because wisdom feels rare, almost mythical itself. The truth is humbling and a little unsettling. Owls are efficient killers of the night, not philosophers of it. Their wisdom is only the reflection of the mysteries we long to see in them. Humans are the only animals that use tools. For centuries, people clung to the belief that tool use was the sacred line dividing humanity from the animal kingdom, the ultimate proof of our superiority. Sticks, stones, fire, invention, these were ours alone, evidence of a mind elevated above instinct. But this myth has been shattered again and again by the raw brilliance of the natural world. Chimpanzees strip branches to fish termites from mounds. Dolphins carry sponges on their snouts to protect themselves while hunting along the sea floor. Crows craft hooks from twigs to pry food from crevices, and otters smash open shellfish with rocks balanced on their bellies. Tools are not uniquely human. They are scattered across the animal kingdom, whispers of intelligence we once refused to see. The persistence of this myth comes from pride. To believe we alone shape objects for purpose makes us feel chosen, elevated, divine in our creativity. It soothes the fear of being just another animal scrabbling for survival. But the truth is more humbling and far more powerful. We are part of a continuum, not an exception. The same spark of ingenuity burns in other species, reminding us that the boundary between human and animal is not as solid as we'd like to think. What makes this myth emotionally gripping is its challenge to identity. If tool use is not uniquely ours, then what truly separates us? It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that intelligence is not monopoly, but spectrum, and in that realization lies something haunting. Our greatness is not isolation, but kinship, shared with creatures whose cleverness we once dismissed as impossible. Hair and nails keep growing after death. The image is chilling, a corpse in the grave, hair snaking longer, nails curling slowly outward, as if the body itself refuses to stop living. It's a myth that has haunted people for centuries, fueling ghost stories and unsettling imaginations. But the truth is that hair and nails do not grow after death. What really happens is far more unsettling. When the body dies, the skin dehydrates and shrinks, pulling back from the scalp and fingertips. This tightening creates the eerie illusion of length, making nails and stubble appear to stretch forward when in reality it is the flesh retreating. This myth persists because it plays on our primal fear of death not being final, the possibility of life clinging stubbornly to the body. The thought that something still grows in the silence of the grave makes death feel less like an ending and more like a grotesque transformation. But biology is merciless. Cells die, energy fades, and no growth continues. The body's changes are not signs of lingering life, but of decay. The emotional power of this belief is undeniable. People are haunted by the idea of corpses continuing in some small way, the dead refusing to stay still, as if clawing at eternity with hair and nails. It gives death an almost monstrous quality, making the grave seem alive with hidden motion. The truth is colder, harsher. Nothing grows, nothing continues. What looks like growth is the slow unraveling of flesh, a trick of death itself, reminding us how fragile and deceptive the line between life and decay can be. Your blood is blue inside your veins. The belief that blood flows blue through your veins until it meets oxygen has haunted biology classrooms and casual conversations for generations. People point to the blue lines beneath their skin as proof, convinced that their lifeblood changes color the moment it touches air. The myth paints human bodies as alien vessels, carrying sapphire streams just out of sight. But the truth is far less mystical and far more fascinating. Blood is always red.
The shade shifts with oxygen levels, bright scarlet when rich with oxygen, darker crimson when depleted, but never blue. The illusion comes from how light penetrates skin and scatters back to our eyes. Veins appear blue, not because of the blood inside them, but because of the way skin absorbs and reflects light at different depths. It's a trick of perception, a quirk of biology, not a secret reservoir of blue life. Surgeons who cut into veins see only shades of red, not rivers of cobalt. Yet the myth persists because it is easy to believe what we see with our own eyes, and the veins beneath pale skin look undeniably blue. What makes this misconception emotionally striking is how it ties to our sense of mystery about our own bodies. People want to believe there's something magical hidden inside them, that beneath the surface runs a color untouchable by air. To learn the truth is both humbling and unsettling. It reveals how easily our senses deceive us, how even the body we inhabit can trick us into seeing what isn't real. The veins are not windows to blue blood, but mirrors of light, reminding us that not everything visible is true. The left hand is dirty in all cultures. The belief that the left hand is universally dirty carries a heavy cultural weight, painting left-handedness as something shameful, impure, or even unlucky. In many parts of the world, particularly in regions where the left hand is traditionally used for hygiene after toileting, it has been considered disrespectful or unclean to eat, shake hands, or pass objects with it. This association seeps into language, religion, and social customs, turning the left hand into a symbol of inferiority. But the idea that this stigma is global, that all cultures share this view, is completely false. In truth, attitudes toward the left hand vary dramatically. In some cultures, it is indeed discouraged for public use, while in others, left-handedness is seen as perfectly natural, even celebrated. Ancient Celts considered left-handed warriors fierce and unpredictable. In modern Western societies, being left-handed has no inherent stigma beyond the historical struggle of living in a right-handed world. Tools, writing systems, and instruments may favor the right, but the notion of impurity attached to the left is not universal. What makes this myth so powerful is the way it preys on human fear of being different. For centuries, children born left-handed were forced to switch, punished for what was simply natural. The emotional toll is profound. Imagine being told your very hand, the one you instinctively use, is wrong, shameful, or dirty. The myth thrives because it feeds conformity, reinforcing invisible rules that strip people of individuality. The truth is liberating yet heartbreaking. The left hand is not universally condemned. It's only human prejudice, shaped by culture, that makes one hand clean and the other unworthy. Lightning never strikes twice in the same place. The myth feels like a promise written into the sky. Once lightning has unleashed its fury on a spot, it moves on forever, sparing that place from future wrath. It's a story of safety after chaos, of storms keeping tally, of nature showing mercy. But reality is far less forgiving. Lightning often strikes the same location again and again, sometimes within seconds, sometimes across years. Skyscrapers like the Empire State Building are struck dozens of times each year because lightning follows the path of least resistance, and tall, conductive structures invite it repeatedly. Trees, towers, open fields, all of them can become lightning's chosen targets more than once, and often do. The myth endures because it gives people comfort. It makes disaster feel one time, a scar that cannot reopen, a wound nature won't inflict twice. The idea of randomness terrifies us, but the idea of protection, however false, soothes the heart. To think the storm may return to the same place unsettles everything we crave about fairness and order. Lightning does not count, does not forgive, does not move on. It obeys physics alone. What makes this myth so emotionally powerful is its false reassurance. Survivors want to believe they're safe, that survival itself grants immunity. But the truth is cruel. Lightning has no memory. It can fall again and again on the same rooftop, the same tree, even the same human being. The storm doesn't keep score. It only searches for the easiest way down. And if that path is familiar, it will take it without hesitation, striking as if the first time never happened at all. The Sahara is the largest desert. The Sahara looms in our imagination as the ultimate desert, waves of golden dunes stretching endlessly under a merciless sun, a barren expanse so vast it swallows entire caravans. It is often described as the largest desert on Earth, a title that makes sense when you think of deserts as only hot, sandy wastelands. But this belief is wrong. The largest desert on our planet is not the Sahara, but Antarctica. Yes, a land of ice and snow, not sand and heat, holds the crown. A desert is defined not by temperature, but by how little precipitation it receives, and Antarctica is the driest, most desolate place on Earth, with regions that haven't seen rainfall in millions of years. This truth feels jarring because it shatters the image of what a desert should be. Deserts are supposed to burn, not freeze. They're supposed to be filled with camels and mirages, not penguins and glaciers. The Sahara, though massive, stretching over 9 million square kilometers, is still smaller than Antarctica's 14 million square kilometers of frozen barrenness. What Antarctica lacks in scorching heat, it more than makes up for in emptiness, isolation, and silence. The myth of the Sahara endures because it fits the drama we associate with deserts, heat waves, skeletons, and mirages shimmering in the distance. Antarctica doesn't evoke the same imagery of suffering, yet its cold, dry expanse is more lethal, more unforgiving, and even more alien than sand. The unsettling truth is that the world's greatest desert is not a sea of fire, but a frozen wasteland where dryness hides beneath ice, and survival is just as impossible. Earth is closer to the sun in summer. The belief that summer arrives because Earth is physically closer to the sun is a myth that seems so logical it feels undeniable. People imagine our planet tilting forward, swooping closer to the blazing star, bathing in extra warmth until it drifts back and winter descends. It's a simple story, neat and intuitive, but it's wrong. The truth is stranger and more beautiful. Earth's seasons are not caused by distance, but by tilt. The planet leans on its axis at about 23.5 degrees, and this lean decides everything. When your hemisphere tilts toward the sun, its rays strike more directly, the days stretch longer, and warmth floods in, not because Earth is closer, but because the light arrives with greater intensity. In fact, Earth is actually closest to the sun in January, during the northern hemisphere's winter, and farthest in July, right in the middle of summer. The difference in distance is real, millions of miles, but it is insignificant compared to the power of axial tilt. The myth endures because it offers comfort in simplicity. Warmth must mean nearness, cold must mean distance, but the reality is more humbling, reminding us that seasons are born not from how far we wander, but from how we lean. What makes this misconception so emotionally resonant is how it mirrors human perception. We assume closeness always means connection, that distance breeds coldness, but Earth defies this. It teaches us that warmth comes from angle, from orientation, from how we receive what is already there. Summer is not proof of closeness, it is proof of perspective, and that lesson makes the myth sting with both humility and wonder. Pilgrims wore all black with buckles. The image of pilgrims dressed in somber black clothing with oversized buckles on their hats and shoes has been etched into American memory, repeated in school plays, holiday decorations, and history books. It paints them as austere, joyless figures whose very wardrobe reflected their strict devotion and simplicity. But this picture is a myth, more fantasy than fact. In reality, pilgrims did not wear all black. nor did they adorn themselves with buckles. Their clothing was far more colorful and practical than the stiff uniform image we've been given. Historical records and surviving garments show that pilgrims wore reds, greens, yellows, browns, and blues made from natural dyes. Black clothing did exist but was costly and typically reserved for special occasions like Sunday services or portraits. As for the buckles, they were not part of pilgrim fashion at all. Those flashy decorations became popular much later, in the 17th and 18th centuries. The myth likely emerged during the Victorian era when artists and writers romanticized the pilgrims as solemn pioneers, dressing them in symbolic black to reflect their supposed seriousness and moral rigidity. The emotional grip of this myth lies in the way it simplifies history. A uniform of black and buckles makes the pilgrims seem otherworldly, stripped of individuality, easier to imagine as pure, stoic founders of a new world. It reassures us that their struggle was noble, their sacrifice painted in shades of discipline and order. But the truth reveals something more human. They were not the grim caricatures we imagine, but people of flesh, color, and spirit, whose lives were filled with far more variety than the myths allow. Drinking milk strengthens bones forever. The story is sold to us from childhood. Drink your milk, and your bones will be strong for life. The image is powerful, children gulping down glasses of white liquid, parents assured that every swallow is insurance against frailty, broken hips, and brittle bones in old age. But this comforting promise is a myth. While milk does provide calcium and vitamin D, which are vital for bone development, it is not a lifelong shield. Bone strength is influenced by genetics, lifestyle, exercise, and age. As we grow older, bone density naturally decreases, and no amount of milk can halt the biological tide of aging. In fact, studies have shown that countries with the highest milk consumption often have higher rates of osteoporosis and fractures, challenging the very narrative dairy marketing has carved into our culture. The myth persists because it feels simple, clean, and hopeful. Milk is accessible, wholesome, and symbolic of purity. It becomes the magical elixir that saves us from decay. Parents want to believe they can protect their children with something as easy as a daily drink, and adults want to believe they've banked protection from the glasses they swallowed as kids. But the reality is harsher. Bones need weight-bearing exercise, a balanced diet, and lifelong care. Milk alone is never enough. What makes this myth so emotionally potent is its betrayal. It tells us strength can be bottled, bought, and consumed, when in truth, resilience must be built and maintained. The white liquid we trusted to guard us forever is not a miracle. It's just a piece of the puzzle, and the illusion that it alone saves us leaves millions unprepared for the fragility that age inevitably brings. The tongue is the strongest muscle in the body. The claim sounds bold and strangely believable. The tongue, that small pink organ in our mouths, is supposedly the strongest muscle in the human body. It's repeated in classrooms, whispered as trivia, and passed around as fact because it feels quirky, surprising, and true. But this is a myth. The tongue is not the strongest muscle. It's a complex group of muscles working together with incredible endurance and flexibility, but strength is not its crown. Other muscles, like the gluteus maximus, the masseter in the jaw, or even the heart, outclass it in raw power or stamina. The confusion comes from how we define strength. The tongue can move endlessly without tiring, shaping words, pushing food, and creating sound. It's agile and resilient, which makes it feel powerful, but strength, in scientific terms, is about force, and the tongue simply doesn't compare to the muscles that lift, push, or carry the body. What the tongue has is persistence, precision, and the ability to move with remarkable control. This myth endures because it resonates on an emotional level. The tongue doesn't just move, it speaks. It has the power to build or destroy with words, to persuade, to comfort, to wound. Calling it the strongest muscle is a poetic reflection of its symbolic force, not its biological strength. The haunting truth is that the tongue's real power isn't in muscle fibers, but in what it unleashes: language, love, cruelty, secrets. It may not be the strongest in flesh, but it is among the most dangerous and unforgettable forces the body carries. Elephants are afraid of mice. The image of a towering elephant trembling at the sight of a tiny mouse has become one of the most enduring myths in popular culture. It has been painted into cartoons, whispered as trivia, and passed down as though the largest land animal on Earth could be undone by something so small. The story is almost comical: giant versus speck, power versus fragility. But it is not true. Elephants are not inherently afraid of mice. What unsettles them, like many animals, are sudden movements or unexpected scurrying near their sensitive trunks and feet. A mouse darting across the ground might startle an elephant the way a spider or insect startles a human, not because of its size, but because of its unpredictability. The myth lingers because it is irresistible. People love the irony of strength undone by weakness, the paradox of might brought to its knees by fragility. It flatters human imagination, giving us a story where the giant is humbled by the insignificant, where even nature's colossus is made ridiculous. Yet science shows elephants have little reason to fear mice. They coexist peacefully in the wild, and elephants are far more concerned with threats like predators, drought, or human hunters than with small rodents. What makes this misconception emotionally powerful is how it mirrors our fascination with vulnerability. We want to believe that even the strongest carry secret fears, that there is always a crack in the armor. The elephant and mouse story comforts us by suggesting that no matter how imposing, every giant can be shaken by something small. But the truth is not fear, it is startle, a fleeting reaction to surprise. The myth persists not because it's real, but because it makes giants feel human. Humans have the largest brains. The belief that humans have the largest brains in the animal kingdom feels like an easy explanation for our intelligence, as if sheer size alone crowned us the masters of Earth. It's a myth that comforts our ego, suggesting that our dominance comes from a physical advantage, a massive brain no creature could rival. But the truth dismantles this illusion. Humans do not have the largest brains. Whales, elephants, and even some dolphins have brains that far exceed the size of ours. A sperm whale's brain can weigh over 17 pounds, compared to the human brain's modest 3. The difference lies not in size, but in proportion and complexity. The human brain is extraordinary because of its structure, its density of neurons, and the intricate connections that give rise to memory, creativity, and self-awareness. We possess a high encephalization quotient, meaning our brain is large relative to our body size, optimized for higher cognitive functions rather than raw mass. Evolution didn't gift us the biggest brain, but the one wired for abstract thought, language, art, and morality, qualities that make us uniquely human. This myth lingers because it feeds our hunger for superiority. We want to believe intelligence is simple, measurable, and undeniable. It feels satisfying to imagine that we can point to size as proof of our dominance. But the reality is more humbling and profound. Intelligence is not a matter of weight or volume, but of delicate design. Our brains are not the largest, but they are something rarer, a reminder that power doesn't always lie in size, but in the mysterious complexity hidden within. Vikings discovered America. The tale is seductive. Fierce Norsemen, sails stretched against icy winds, crossing the unknown Atlantic to set foot on the wild shores of America centuries before Columbus. It gives Vikings the title of first discoverers, bold explorers who claimed the New World long before the age of exploration. but the truth is tangled in both time and meaning. Yes, Leif Erikson and his crew reached North America around the year 1000, landing in a place they called Vinland, likely in present-day Newfoundland. Archaeological evidence at Lons All Meadows confirms their presence, yet to say they discovered America is to erase something much larger. Indigenous peoples had been living, thriving, and building civilizations across the continent for tens of thousands of years before a Viking ship ever touched its shore. The myth survives because it fits a narrative people crave: discovery as a single dramatic moment, a chosen figure planting a flag and claiming glory. It strips away the complexity of countless generations who were already there, turning discovery into conquest, ownership, and legacy. For Europeans, crowning Vikings as discoverers makes the story of America's beginning older, more adventurous, even romantic. But for indigenous peoples, it is another theft of history, of presence, of acknowledgement. What makes this myth emotionally powerful is its blend of pride and erasure. It excites the imagination to picture longboats slicing into misty coasts, but it blinds us to the deeper truth. America was never discovered by outsiders. It was already alive, rich with culture and people. The Vikings came, stayed briefly, and left, but the myth lingers because it satisfies our hunger for heroes, even if it silences the millions whose ancestors were there all along. Cavities are caused only by sugar. From childhood, the warning is clear and terrifying. Eat too much candy and your teeth will rot. Sugar becomes the villain, the single culprit blamed for every cavity and trip to the dentist's chair. The myth is simple and easy to believe, but it's not the full truth. Cavities are not caused by sugar alone. They are caused by bacteria that feed on sugars and starches, producing acid that erodes enamel and weakens teeth. This means it isn't just candy that threatens your smile. Bread, pasta, fruit, soda, even seemingly harmless crackers can fuel the same destructive process. The danger comes not only from what you eat, but how often you eat it and how long the acids linger on your teeth. A single piece of chocolate eaten quickly may be less harmful than sipping a sugary soda for hours, bathing teeth in acid. Genetics, oral hygiene, saliva production, and even certain medications play roles in cavity risk. To reduce tooth decay to sugar alone oversimplifies a disease that thrives on many fronts. The myth persists because sugar is easy to demonize. It's sweet, addictive, and indulgent, the perfect scapegoat for pain and guilt. Parents use it as a weapon of fear to protect children. Dentists repeat it to drive home caution, and society embraces it because it makes the problem feel controllable. Avoid sugar, avoid cavities. But the truth is more unsettling. Cavities are a war between bacteria and your body, and sugar is only one of many weapons. The real enemy is invisible, microscopic, and always waiting in the shadows of your smile. You lose most of your body heat through your head. The belief that the majority of body heat escapes through the head has been passed down like a survival commandment. Parents insist on hats in winter, warning that without one, you'll bleed warmth into the cold and freeze. Soldiers were once told the same, drilled with the idea that an uncovered head was a death sentence in harsh weather. The myth paints the head as a kind of heat chimney, the place where the body leaks its life force. But the truth is far simpler and less dramatic. You lose heat through any uncovered part of the body, and the head is no exception. The origin of this misconception traces back to flawed military experiments in the 1950s, where volunteers in Arctic gear, but no hats, appeared to lose most of their heat from the head. What the studies overlooked was obvious. The head was the only exposed part of their bodies. Of course, it appeared to radiate the most heat. In reality, if you left your arms or legs uncovered, they would lose heat just as quickly. The head accounts for only about 7 to 10% of body surface area, and heat loss is proportional to exposure. The emotional grip of this myth comes from how it ties warmth to survival. A bare head feels vulnerable, cold air biting at the scalp and ears, making it easy to imagine life draining away from that single point. The truth is more humbling. The body is not a vessel with a single leak, but a fragile balance of warmth everywhere. Hats help, yes, but not because the head is special, only because cold does not spare any part of us we leave exposed. Drinking alcohol kills germs in your throat. The belief that drinking alcohol kills germs in your throat is one of those myths that sounds logical enough to spread without question. After all, we use alcohol to disinfect wounds and sterilize surfaces, so why wouldn't a shot of whiskey or a glass of strong liquor do the same inside the body? The idea has even been romanticized. Soldiers, cowboys, and weary travelers swigging spirits to fight off illness, as if the burn in their throat was proof of its cleansing power. But the truth is more sobering. Drinking alcohol does not sterilize your throat or protect you from infection. For alcohol to actually kill germs, it needs to be at a concentration of around 60 to 70%, far stronger than any drinkable beverage. Even the strongest liquors, hovering around 40%, fall short. And when swallowed, alcohol doesn't linger in the throat long enough to act as a disinfectant. Instead, it moves quickly to the stomach and bloodstream, where its effects are intoxicating, not medicinal. The warmth and sting people feel is not proof of killing germs, but simply the irritation of sensitive tissues. The emotional pull of this myth comes from how much we want control over invisible threats. Germs are silent invaders, and the idea that something as accessible as alcohol could ward them off is deeply appealing. It makes us feel powerful, as though each drink is a defense against sickness. But the reality is darker. Relying on alcohol as medicine not only fails to protect, but can weaken the immune system over time, leaving the body more vulnerable. The burn in your throat is not safety. It's a lie dressed in fire. Microwave ovens cause cancer. The myth whispers fear into every hum of a microwave. Invisible rays seeping into food, mutating cells, planting seeds of cancer with every reheated meal. It is a story that lingers because it feels sinister. Technology using unseen energy, altering what we eat in ways we can't perceive. But the truth is far less dramatic. Microwave ovens use non-ionizing radiation, which means their waves lack the energy to damage DNA. They don't make food radioactive, they don't contaminate it, and they don't carry the destructive power of X-rays or nuclear materials. Instead, they simply excite water molecules, generating heat that cooks food from the inside out. The myth persists because cancer is humanity's most dreaded enemy, and linking it to something as common as a kitchen appliance feeds both paranoia and control. If a device in nearly every home could cause cancer, then every dinner, every bag of popcorn, every midnight snack could be a slow betrayal. The emotional sting is the thought of betrayal from within, the heart of the home, the kitchen, turned into a danger zone. What grips us is the mystery of radiation itself. It's invisible, untouchable, and history has shown us its horrors in nuclear fallout and medical misuse. To connect microwaves to cancer feels instinctively right because it ties our fear of the unseen to our most intimate act, eating. The irony is cruel. The real danger lies not in microwaving food, but in the myths that drive fear deeper than science ever could. And still, the hum of a microwave carries a shadow for many, not because it kills, but because the story that it might is too chilling to let go. Eating late at night makes you gain weight. The warning feels absolute. If you eat after dark, the food will cling to your body, turning straight into fat as you sleep. Midnight snacks are demonized, painted as guilty pleasures that sabotage health and silently expand your waistline. But this is a myth. Eating late at night does not automatically make you gain weight. What matters most is the total calories you consume and how they balance against what you burn. Your body doesn't magically store food as fat just because the clock strikes 10. The belief likely grew from observation because people often eat differently at night. Late meals tend to be heavier, less planned, more indulgent. Pizza boxes, chips, ice cream, fast food grabbed on the way home. Pair that with lower activity levels before bed, and it becomes easy to blame the timing instead of the habits. But science shows that weight gain comes from consistent calorie surplus, not the hour on the clock. Whether you eat those extra 500 calories at noon or midnight, your body processes them in much the same way. This myth endures because it's emotionally satisfying. It gives people a villain to fight, a rule that feels simple: stop eating after a certain time and the weight will vanish. It whispers control in a world where weight and food feel overwhelming. The darker truth is that weight struggles are far more complex. Hormones, stress, sleep, genetics, and lifestyle all weave into the story. Blaming the clock is easy, but it's not the hour that adds weight. It's the choices, the cravings, and the hidden battles we carry into the night. A mother bird will abandon a baby if touched by humans. The warning is delivered with the gravity of a curse. Never touch a baby bird, or its mother will smell the human scent and forsake it forever. It's a myth that has silenced countless children in backyards, making them afraid of even rescuing a helpless chick that has tumbled from its nest. The story paints mother birds as heartless creatures, quick to turn away from their young at the faintest trace of humanity. But this is not true. Birds do not abandon their babies simply because a human has touched them. In fact, most birds have a limited sense of smell, far too weak to detect the faint trace of human contact. What drives a mother bird's devotion is not scent, but instinct, and she will continue to care for her chicks as long as they remain alive and vulnerable. This misconception may have grown from well-meaning adults trying to protect wildlife, creating a frightening story to keep curious hands away from fragile nests. While the intention was protective, the lie has overshadowed the truth. In reality, if you place a chick gently back in its nest, the mother will almost always return. What endangers baby birds far more is not human scent, but stress, predators, and lack of care when people simply walk away believing the myth. What makes this belief so emotionally charged is the fear of rejection, the idea that a mother could abandon her child because of us. It taps into one of the deepest human anxieties, that love can be severed by the smallest mistake. The truth is softer, kinder, and more powerful. Mother birds are not so fragile in their devotion. They return, they feed, they protect, even after a touch. The danger is not in the contact, but in our refusal to help when help is needed. Bananas grow on trees. The image of bananas hanging from tall, leafy trees in tropical landscapes feels so natural that few ever question it. We picture rows of banana trees swaying in the sun, their yellow fruit clustered in heavy bunches, a perfect symbol of abundance. But the truth is startling. Bananas do not grow on trees at all. What we call a banana tree is, in fact, a giant herb, one of the largest on Earth. Its trunk is not made of wood, but of tightly packed layers of leaf bases, a structure that looks like a tree, yet has none of its true anatomy. This distinction matters because it shatters the illusion of permanence and strength. Trees are enduring, with roots and rings that tell stories across centuries. Banana plants, by contrast, live fast and die young. Each stalk produces fruit once before collapsing, replaced by new shoots that rise from the base. The cycle is one of constant renewal, fragile and fleeting rather than eternal. The banana we see in grocery stores is born not of wood and roots, but of an herb that thrives by surrendering to impermanence. The persistence of the myth lies in appearances. Humans trust their eyes, and what they see looks like a tree, tall and commanding. To learn it is only an herb feels almost like betrayal, as though nature tricked us with disguise. Yet there is something hauntingly beautiful in the truth. Bananas remind us that strength doesn't always come from wood and stone. It can come from fragility, from the ability to flourish briefly, collapse, and rise again endlessly in cycles of life. Glass is a slow-flowing liquid. The myth presents itself in whispers of history. Look at the ancient church windows, thick at the bottom and thin at the top, proof that glass flows ever so slowly, drooping under the weight of centuries. It paints glass as something ghostly and alive, a material that pretends to be solid but secretly moves like syrup stretched across time. But this belief is false. Glass is not a liquid, it is an amorphous solid, a state of matter frozen between liquid and crystal, its molecules locked in place, though arranged without perfect order. The uneven panes of old windows aren't evidence of flowing glass. They're evidence of crude medieval glassmaking, when sheets were spun or poured and often cooled unevenly. Craftsmen deliberately placed the thicker edge at the bottom for stability, creating the illusion centuries later that the glass itself had crept downward. The myth endures because it makes the ordinary mysterious. To imagine a window pane, silent and still, actually moving, too slow for human eyes, feels like a secret revelation, a reminder that time alters everything in ways we cannot see. It plays into our fascination with impermanence, the idea that even the walls around us are alive with change, betraying the permanence we crave. What makes this myth emotionally powerful is its poetry. It suggests the world is never as solid as it seems, that even glass, the material we trust to hold back the storm and frame our vision, is secretly melting with time. The truth strips away the magic, but the myth lingers because it feeds our need to believe the stillness around us is only an illusion. You can see the Great Wall of China from the moon. The myth is grand, almost poetic. The Great Wall of China, a human creation so vast and mighty, can be seen from the moon with the naked eye. It's repeated in classrooms, travel guides, and trivia books, turning the wall into a symbol of human achievement carved so deeply into Earth that even astronauts could gaze upon it from lunar distance. But this is a lie. From the moon, nearly 240,000 miles away, no man-made structure is visible without powerful technology. Even from low Earth orbit, spotting the wall with the naked eye is nearly impossible because it is narrow, built from materials that blend into the surrounding terrain and often obscured by haze or clouds. What astronauts can see are things very different from the myth: vast city lights glowing at night, sprawling airports, or large road networks that reflect sunlight. The Great Wall, for all its length, is a thread lost in the vastness of mountains and deserts. It is no more visible than a single scar upon the skin of the planet. The emotional force of this myth is what keeps it alive. People want to believe that human effort can leave a mark so profound it transcends Earth itself. The wall becomes more than stone. It becomes proof that our hands can shape the world so powerfully that even the heavens must take notice. The truth, though, is humbling. No matter how massive our monuments, they vanish when set against the immensity of Earth, reminding us that our greatest works are still fragile whispers under the gaze of the universe. A coin toss is always 50-50. The coin toss has long been treated as the purest symbol of chance, a perfect 50-50 split between heads and tails. It's used to settle disputes, decide games, and symbolize fairness, as though the universe itself has agreed to abide by this rule of balance. The myth whispers of mathematical certainty, that no matter who flips, no matter where it lands, the odds are eternally even. But the truth is more complicated and far less fair. A coin toss is not perfectly random. Physics, spin, starting position, and even the way a coin is caught can tilt the outcome toward one side. Studies have shown that coins tend to land on the same side they started facing upward, slightly more than half the time, breaking the illusion of 50-50. The persistence of this misconception lies in its usefulness. People crave a symbol of impartiality, a quick way to surrender decisions to fate without questioning the mechanics behind it. The ritual of a coin spinning through the air feels pure, as if chaos itself has been distilled into fairness. Yet behind the spinning metal lies bias, small but undeniable, reminding us that even chance is rarely perfect. What makes this myth emotionally resonant is how it feeds our longing for certainty in uncertainty. The 50-50 promise comforts us when choices feel too heavy to make, when arguments need a resolution no one can contest. But the reality is sobering. The world is rarely that balanced. Even the flip of a coin carries history, physics, and imperfection with it. What we mistake for fairness is often just another illusion of control, fragile and flawed, like everything else we build to keep chaos at bay. Columbus proved the earth is round. The story that Christopher Columbus set sail to prove the earth was round is one of the most enduring historical myths. It paints him as a bold visionary, a man defying the ignorance of his time to shatter the flat earth belief. In classrooms and children's books, he becomes the hero who challenged superstition with courage and discovery. But this is false. By the 15th century, educated Europeans already knew the earth was round. Ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Eratosthenes had demonstrated it centuries earlier through observation and mathematics. What Columbus was really gambling on was not the earth's shape, but its size. Columbus believed Asia could be reached quickly by sailing west, drastically underestimating the true circumference of the earth. His calculations were wrong, and had the Americas not existed to interrupt his voyage, his crew might have starved long before reaching Asia. Far from proving the planet's roundness, he stumbled into a landmass he hadn't anticipated, reshaping history by accident rather than design. The emotional power of this myth lies in its simplicity. It casts Columbus as the lone genius, the brave rebel who proved everyone else wrong. People are drawn to stories where truth triumphs over ignorance, where the hero stands against the world. But the reality is both less flattering and more human. Columbus did not uncover a round earth. He miscalculated it, gambled with lives, and by sheer chance encountered a new world. The myth persists because it satisfies our hunger for clear heroes, even if history itself was far messier, driven not by vision, but by error and luck. Sharks don't get cancer. The myth is wrapped in awe and terror. Sharks, ancient predators that have ruled the oceans for hundreds of millions of years, are so perfect, so invincible that even cancer cannot touch them. It paints them as untouchable beings, immune to the fragility that plagues every other creature. But this story is a dangerous lie. Sharks do get cancer. Tumors have been found in their cartilage, livers, and other tissues. Scientists have studied them for decades, documenting the disease in multiple species. The myth, however, refuses to die because it offers humans something we desperately crave, a symbol of immortality. The myth gained traction in the 20th century, fueled by books and pseudoscience claiming shark cartilage could cure cancer. Desperate patients were told to consume pills or powders ground from shark skeletons, believing they were swallowing the key to survival. But not only was it untrue, it was cruel. Sharks were slaughtered by the millions for a false hope, while patients wasted precious time chasing a cure that never existed. The emotional grip of this myth lies in what sharks represent. They are apex predators, feared and respected, seemingly eternal. To imagine them free of cancer makes them into gods of the sea, and humans, terrified of mortality, reach for them as symbols of the strength we lack. The truth is harsher. Cancer spares no species, no matter how ancient or powerful. Sharks bleed, suffer, and die just as we do. Yet the myth lingers because it feeds a desperate dream that somewhere in nature, immortality exists, and that maybe, just maybe, we can steal it for ourselves. Sugar causes diabetes directly. The warning is sharp and absolute.
Eat too much sugar and you'll get diabetes. It's a myth that has shaped fear for generations, turning candy bars and sodas into ticking time bombs in people's minds. The truth, however, is more complicated and in some ways more frightening. Eating sugar does not directly cause diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease where the body attacks the cells that produce insulin, and sugar plays no role in its onset. Type 2 diabetes, the more common form, is influenced by genetics, weight, inactivity, and diet overall, not sugar alone. But here's where the myth finds its haunting half-truth. Diets high in sugary drinks and processed foods can contribute to obesity and insulin resistance, major risk factors for type 2 diabetes. It isn't that sugar acts as a single trigger, but that excessive sugar can fuel the chain reaction leading to the disease. This nuance is lost in the simplified myth, which reduces a complex illness to a single, easily understood villain. The reason this belief endures is its emotional grip. People crave control, and the idea that avoiding sugar could shield them from a life-altering disease is comforting. Parents warn their children with it, doctors once repeated it, and society clings to it because it feels like a clear rule in a world of uncertainty. But the reality is heavier. Diabetes is not born from one spoonful of sugar. It grows from a storm of choices, biology, and chance. The myth gives us an enemy to fight, but the truth reminds us that the battlefield is far larger and far more personal than sugar alone. Earth is the only planet with water. The belief that Earth alone holds water has been repeated so often it feels like proof of our planet's uniqueness, a sacred trait that makes our world the lone oasis in an endless desert of stars. It paints Earth as a miracle, the only blue marble afloat in a cold, dry void. But this is a myth. Water is not exclusive to Earth. It is scattered across the solar system and beyond, locked in ice, vapor, and even hidden oceans beneath alien crusts. Scientists have discovered water on Mars, not just in ancient riverbeds, but in polar ice caps that still glisten today. Jupiter's moon Europa and Saturn's moon Enceladus harbor vast subsurface oceans, their geysers blasting plumes of water vapor into space. Even tiny comets, drifting chunks of rock and ice, carry water frozen since the birth of the solar system. The myth endures because of how we define life. Earth is the only world we know where water exists in liquid abundance on the surface, flowing in rivers, crashing in waves, falling as rain. That visibility makes it easy to believe we are the chosen planet, the exception in a universe of dust. But reality is far more humbling and awe-inspiring. Water is everywhere, a cosmic thread weaving through planets, moons, and even interstellar clouds. What makes this misconception emotionally gripping is how it challenges our sense of isolation. To think Earth is the only cradle of water is to feel special, chosen. To learn that water exists elsewhere is both unsettling and exhilarating, a reminder that life's most essential ingredient may not be rare at all. The universe might be less lonely than we've ever dared to imagine. Caffeine dehydrates you. The claim that caffeine dehydrates you has been repeated so often that many people feel guilty for reaching for their morning coffee, convinced it is secretly draining their body of water. It seems logical. Caffeine is a diuretic, meaning it increases urination, so surely it must strip away hydration with every sip. The warning carries a quiet threat. Your daily comfort is also your undoing. But this is a distortion of the truth. While caffeine can have a mild diuretic effect, the water in coffee, tea, or soda far outweighs any loss. Drinking caffeinated beverages still contributes to your hydration, not against it. Research has shown that regular caffeine consumers develop a tolerance, blunting even the small diuretic effect. For most people, a cup of coffee or two will hydrate nearly as effectively
as plain water. The myth likely spread because people equated any increase in urination with dehydration, ignoring the balance of fluid intake. In reality, you would have to consume an extreme amount of caffeine before risking true fluid imbalance. What gives this myth such emotional weight is the way it clashes with comfort and need. Coffee is ritual. It wakes us, soothes us, and punctuates our days. To believe it betrays us by drying us out adds guilt to every sip, making indulgence feel like harm. But the truth is gentler. Your morning coffee is not an enemy of your body's needs, but part of them. The lie endures because fear is louder than nuance, because it is easier to believe comfort has a hidden cost than to accept that something so beloved can still be safe. Penguins mate for life. The myth is charming, almost cinematic. Penguins waddling across ice, choosing a partner with a pebble, and then staying loyal until death. It's a story repeated in documentaries, classrooms, and love metaphors, turning penguins into symbols of eternal devotion. But the truth is far messier. While some penguin species, like the emperor or Adelie, often return to the same partner for a breeding season, lifelong monogamy is rare. Many penguins switch partners between seasons, and even within one season, affairs and mate changes are not uncommon. Fidelity is less about undying love and more about practicality. Returning to the same mate saves time when raising chicks in brutal climates. When survival is on the line, efficiency trumps romance. The myth survives because it comforts us. In a world where human relationships fracture and fail, the idea of penguins as little tuxedoed romantics who embody the love we crave is irresistible. They become tiny, frozen reminders that somewhere in nature, loyalty is pure and unbreakable, but reality strips that magic away. Penguins, like humans, navigate complex relationships shaped by environment, stress, and survival. Their love stories are pragmatic, not eternal. What makes this myth emotionally gripping is its betrayal of innocence. Penguins, with their awkward waddles and tender courtship rituals, feel too pure to mirror human flaws. To learn that they, too, move on, stray, and adapt reminds us that fidelity is not a law of nature, but a fragile choice. The tuxedos don't symbolize everlasting vows. They are disguises for a truth far more human. Love in the animal kingdom, like ours, is messy, fleeting, and imperfect. Redheads are going extinct. The claim spreads like wildfire every few years. Redheads are a dying breed, their fiery hair destined to vanish from the human gene pool. Headlines scream it, conversations repeat it, and people pass it along with a tinge of sadness, as if a unique beauty is slipping away forever. But this is a myth. Red hair is caused by a variation in the MC1R gene, a recessive trait that requires both parents to pass it on. That makes it rare. Only about 1 to 2% of the global population has naturally red hair, but rarity is not extinction. Genes don't simply vanish unless wiped out entirely, and the MC1R variation remains firmly embedded in human DNA. The misunderstanding comes from how recessive traits work. Because two carriers must meet and pass the gene forward, red hair may appear less often in certain generations or populations, but the gene doesn't die. It hides, waiting, resurfacing when chance allows. Red hair has endured for thousands of years through shifting populations, migrations, and intermarriages, and it will continue to appear as long as the gene exists. The emotional power of this myth is striking. Red hair feels mythical, associated with fire, rebellion, danger, and allure. To imagine it disappearing plays on our fear of losing something rare and irreplaceable. The myth whispers of vanishing magic, of uniqueness fading in a world becoming more uniform. But the truth is both less tragic and more haunting. Redheads will never disappear completely. They will remain rare, flickering like embers in the human story, not extinct but eternal reminders of how beauty survives in small, defiant sparks. You can tell the sex of a baby by how a pregnant belly looks. The belief that the shape or position of a pregnant belly reveals whether a baby will be a boy or a girl has been whispered across generations, dressed up as wisdom passed from mothers to daughters. People claim that if the belly is high, it's a girl, and if it's low, it's a boy. Others swear that carrying wide means a daughter, while carrying narrow means a son. These stories offer comfort, a sense of knowing the unknowable, of peeking into the future without waiting. But the truth is this: the shape of a pregnant belly says nothing about the sex of the baby. It is determined by factors like the mother's body type, muscle tone, posture, and the baby's position, not whether the child is male or female. The myth endures because it gives pregnancy a layer of magic, a guessing game that invites family and friends to participate. It creates connection through prediction, a way for communities to feel involved in the mystery of birth. But beneath the charm lies the danger of misinformation. Believing these tales can raise false hopes, disappoint expectations, and even carry subtle pressure when reality does not align with the prediction. What makes this misconception emotionally powerful is the way it intertwines with anticipation. Parents-to-be want certainty, want to bond with the life growing inside them, want clues to build a story around. The belly becomes a canvas for prophecy. But the truth is humbling. Life does not reveal its secrets in the curve of a womb. The child's sex remains hidden until science uncovers it, or until the first cry announces it to the world. Dinosaurs were all giant reptiles. The picture most people hold of dinosaurs is of towering, scaly monsters, roaring giants stomping through swamps, lumbering beasts locked in endless battles. They are imagined as cold-blooded reptiles, enormous and alien, nothing like the life that surrounds us today. But this is a myth. Dinosaurs were not all giant reptiles, nor were they all enormous. In fact, many were small, feathered, agile, and far closer to birds than to lizards. Some dinosaurs were the size of chickens, darting predators or quiet foragers, their delicate forms a stark contrast to the monsters we imagine. The misunderstanding dates back to early fossil discoveries, when scientists, awed by massive bones, compared them to the largest creatures they knew, reptiles like crocodiles and lizards. This assumption painted the entire lineage with a reptilian brush, a mistake that stuck in popular culture. Yet discoveries over the past century have rewritten that image. Fossil evidence of feathers, nesting behaviors, and warm-blooded metabolisms reveals a more complex truth. Dinosaurs were diverse, dynamic, and many were more bird-like than reptilian. The emotional weight of this myth lies in our hunger for spectacle. To imagine dinosaurs as only giants satisfies our craving for awe and terror, for creatures that dwarf us and remind us of our fragility. But the truth is even more astonishing. Dinosaurs were not just monsters of the past. They are alive today in the form of birds, their descendants filling our skies with the echoes of ancient roars. The myth steals something from them, their diversity, their beauty, and the haunting reminder that what once ruled the earth has never truly left. All deserts are hot. The word desert instantly conjures images of burning suns, endless dunes, and blistering heat that cracks the skin and scorches the earth. It's a picture carved into our imaginations by movies, books, and childhood lessons. Deserts as wastelands of unbearable heat. But the truth dismantles this vision. A desert is defined not by temperature, but by aridity, by how little rainfall it receives. And some of the world's greatest deserts are bitterly cold. Antarctica, vast and ice-covered, is the largest desert on Earth, with less precipitation than the Sahara. The Arctic, too, is a desert. Its frozen silence, a reminder that lack of water, not heat, defines these landscapes. The myth persists because it fits the emotional image we crave. The desert is supposed to be hostile, alien, dangerous, and heat feels like the ultimate enemy. Our minds pair dryness with burning, not freezing, and the thought of a desert filled with ice and snow clashes with every story we've been told. To accept that deserts can be frozen wastelands is to confront a dissonance that feels unnatural. What makes this myth powerful is its betrayal of expectation. We want the world to follow simple categories: deserts hot, poles cold, forests green. But nature refuses to obey those neat boundaries. The truth unsettles us because it shows how fragile our definitions are, how easily the world breaks the patterns we cling to. A desert isn't just a sea of sand. It can also be an endless expanse of ice, silent, dry, and no less lethal. Dogs sweat through their tongues. The belief is simple and widely accepted. When a dog pants, it is sweating through its tongue, releasing heat the same way humans do through their skin. It makes sense at first glance. The tongue hangs out, wet and dripping, the chest rising and falling, as if the dog is desperately trying to cool down. But this is a myth. Dogs do not sweat through their tongues. Panting cools them through evaporation, but the tongue is not a sweat gland. It's a surface for moisture to evaporate, lowering body temperature like a living radiator. Dogs actually have sweat glands, but they are concentrated in the pads of their paws, not their tongues. These glands provide only minimal cooling. The real magic of panting lies in rapid breathing, which circulates air over the moist surfaces of the mouth and respiratory tract, allowing heat to dissipate. It's a survival system built for efficiency, keeping a fur-covered animal alive in the heat where sweating alone would fail. This myth clings to life because it feels like truth. Watching a dog pant after a run, or on a scorching day, you see a creature working hard to shed its heat, and it's easy to imagine the tongue doing the job. It's an image that comforts us, giving the chaos of biology a neat explanation. But the reality is far more haunting. Panting is not sweat, it's desperation. A dog on the edge of overheating pants harder and harder, fighting to survive. To mistake that struggle for sweating is to overlook just how fragile and vulnerable they truly are.